The fierce history of the sun symbolizing emblem knights of the Rutinous Empire is legendary. Opposite them stand the noble Grey Knights, who resemble the pale moonlight. The two powerful factions have clashed as sworn enemies across generations. Their bitter, bloody rivalry has run deep through the ages. Citizens mock the very idea of these historic rival groups ever uniting. A shocking public notice reveals the two rival female commanders have become sworn sisters. Outraged murmurs spread through the crowd as people struggle to believe the news. The scene shifts to a sunlit park where the legacy of this union begins. The two legendary female commanders walk side by side in peaceful harmony. The gray-haired commander proposes a future marriage alliance between their children to seal the peace. Aina, the red-haired emblem commander, enthusiastically agrees to the harmony-binding union. A grand bell rings out under a clear blue sky, signaling the wedding day. However, the bride-to-be, Saoirse, is absolutely furious on her wedding day. She seethes with intense hatred for her designated fiancé from the rival faction. Saoirse remembers her arrogant lifelong rival Enoch Grey with pure rage. In a fit of anger, Saoirse throws her wedding veil across the room. Her brown-haired maid, Cecilia, gasps in horror at Saoirse's stubborn refusal to wear a dress. Cecilia is completely flabbergasted by Saoirse's determination to attend her engagement in armor. Saoirse casually turns away, ignoring Cecilia's frantic pleas about noble etiquette. Saoirse looks incredibly handsome and resolute, wearing her blue military uniform with pride. Cecilia sighs in defeat but remains anxious about the impending ceremony. Cecilia is outraged to find Saoirse has armed herself with a sword for the engagement. Saoirse dismisses the political marriage as nothing more than their mother showing off. A sudden wave of pure shock hits Cecilia at her master's indifference. Cecilia passionately explains the massive global political weight of this union to her lady. Saoirse is bewildered as Cecilia bursts into genuine tears over the solemnity of the event. Cecilia emotionally sniffs, deeply touched by the historical significance of the marriage. Sunlight bathes the palace conservatory where the historic union is prepared. A voice notes that the sheer entertainment of the enemies marrying has drawn a massive crowd. Saoirse triumphantly pumps a censored fist, prompting another scream of despair from her maid. Saoirse reassures Cecilia that everything will actually play out in her favor. Saoirse gleefully reveals her hope that the ceremony will be cancelled since Enoch is missing. Their conversation is abruptly cut short by a loud sudden slam at the door. Both women turn around in surprise to see what caused the commotion. Three of Saoirse's bumbling knights crash clumsily through the double doors, groaning in pain. The knights bicker loudly among themselves about rumors of Saoirse wearing a wedding dress. The knights quickly quiet down under Saoirse's intimidating crossed-arm glare. A knight delivers the vice commander's shocking suggestion that Saoirse should just run away. The loyal but foolish knights enthusiastically offer to escort her escape. Cecilia shrieks in panic, begging Saoirse not to listen to their terrible advice. The scene shifts to the magnificent imperial banquet hall where the grand ceremony is prepared. Saoirse proudly declares that she cannot simply flee her duties as a commander. Cecilia's eyes sparkle with immense admiration for Saoirse's noble, responsible decision. Privately, Saoirse smirks as she plots to use Enoch's absence to call off the engagement. The elderly priest approaches Saoirse to inform her that everything is ready. When the priest suggests praying for Enoch's safety, Saoirse remarks she would rather beat him up herself. The priest's sweat drops at her bluntness as Saoirse insists on starting the ceremony immediately. Saoirse boldly confirms she intends to proceed with the ceremony completely alone. The priest hesitates, worried about the social consequences of a solo engagement. He warns Saoirse that proceeding alone might leave her unable to marry anyone else. The emotional, bald priest tearfully agrees to proceed with Lady Saoirse's bold request. Saoirse enthusiastically demands they start the ceremony immediately, and the priest happily agrees. Grand gold horns blare loudly to signal the start of the solo engagement ceremony. The elderly priest stands ready at the altar as the ceremony officially begins. Saoirse walks forward as the crowd whispers disappointedly about the missing Enoch. Saoirse mentally complains about the crowd's loud, foolish romanticization of the insufferable Enoch. Saoirse dismisses the murmurs, smirking in satisfaction at her rival's convenient absence. Saoirse freezes in shock as a mysterious silhouetted figure appears at the entrance. Saoirse turns around with a sweat drop, deeply unsettled by the unexpected arrival. A battle-worn, silver-haired man covered in blood makes a dramatic entrance. Blood-splattered silver-haired man smiles confidently, undeterred by his state. Saoirse asks about his bloody condition, and Enoch replies he had to make it. Saoirse angrily demands Enoch stop calling her by her sickening nickname. Enoch grabs Saoirse's chin as she demands to know what he is talking about. Enoch dismisses her question and suddenly pulls her into a shocking kiss. Saoirse is completely paralyzed with shock, wondering what on earth is happening. Circia internally curses Enoch for his incredibly bold and unexpected action. Circea's bumbling knights erupt in furious outrage over Enoch's unacceptable behavior. Enoch gazes deeply into her eyes as the shocking moment stretches on. Circia remains utterly dumbfounded by the reality of being kissed right then. Their lips slowly part, leaving a lingering tension in the silent hall. Enoch asks if she missed him, while Circia struggles to comprehend his identity. Circia reacts in utter confusion as Enoch reaches toward her once more. Circia recoils in horror, wondering how Enoch knows her past life's occupation. Circia demands to know how Enoch could possibly be aware of that word. Circia stares at his eyes, suddenly realizing his true identity. Revelation dawns as she recognizes her old enemy at her own engagement. The scene transitions back to the very beginning of her new life. Circea's mother proudly presents her newborn baby daughter to her husband. Parents hope their daughter will finally bring harmony to their rival houses. The parents marvel at the intense, screaming energy of their newborn child. In reality, Circea's reincarnated soul remembers her past life as a Korean detective. Parents discuss how pleased the family head will be by her strength. The baby internally screams in confusion, trying to comprehend her bizarre reincarnation. She recalls her initial frustration at being trapped inside a helpless baby's body. She remembers chasing her parents' killer, her lifelong enemy, in her past life. She vividly recalls shouting for the fleeing culprit to stop right there. She remembers reaching out to grab the culprit just as he nearly escaped. Her final memory is a tragic accident, leaving her deeply frustrated and wronged. The parents mistake their baby's frustrated internal detective screams for beautiful canary-like crying. The parents interpret her angry wails as a sign of a great destiny. No one, not even her doting parents, could comprehend her baby's true thoughts. The castle maids gather round Circe's crib, gushing over her adorable cheeks. Young Circe sits quietly, slowly adjusting to her new life as a toddler. Circia realizes she can easily manipulate her caretakers, enjoying the perks of toddlerhood. The head maid reprimands the others for slacking off instead of preparing for the family head. The maids gossip about why the family head hasn't visited his granddaughter once. Circe casually wonders if the grandfather's heart will eventually soften over time. Circia reveals they were banished because the grandfather refuses to recognize them. Circia dismisses the banishment, questioning if such dramatic hostility is even necessary. Rested and content, baby Circia happily resolves to live a quiet, lazy life this time. Frantic shouts from the cleaning maid suddenly wake baby Circe from her peaceful sleep. A worried maid rushes in, startling Circia as she wonders about the loud commotion. Circia can only babble in confusion as she tries to ask what is happening. The panicked maid urgently warns Circia that her terrifying grandfather is about to arrive. The maid begs Circia to behave while a voice calls for the staff to gather. The maid runs off in terror, leaving Circia feeling incredibly nervous about her grandfather. Heavy, imposing footsteps sound down the corridor as the feared visitor finally makes his entrance. The trembling household staff stands in a rigid, anxious line to greet the family patriarch. The legendary family patriarch, Zedphil Emblem, stands tall, radiating a stern and overwhelming presence. Glaring with intense authority, the red-bearded patriarch demands to see his granddaughter immediately. A heavy, tense silence settles over the hall as the patriarch stands completely motionless. An oppressive purple aura radiates from the patriarch, causing the sweat-dropping Circia to panic. Circe observes his terrifying demeanor, wondering if she was hated by such a formidable commander. The butler nervously introduces the baby, but the grandfather reacts with growing, dangerous anger. Enraged, the grandfather strikes out with sheer pressure, punishing the butler for naming Circe. Circe is utterly shocked as the butler coughs up blood from the grandfather's sheer pressure. Circia marvels in shock at the unfathomable superhuman strength of her grandfather's aura. A blazing red aura cloaks the patriarch as he stands tall over the butler. Circe panics in sheer terror as her grandfather suddenly locks his glowing eyes onto her. Circe trembles while holding her toy, but the grandfather surprisingly wonders if she is underfed. The butler sweat drops and assures the grandfather that the baby actually has a great appetite. The grandfather insults Circe's tiny size before departing, leaving her offended by his remark. Circe tries to baby talk her concern to the butler, who is touched by her worry. The butler proudly reveals a bottle of fake blood, explaining it is a survival tactic. Circe is highly impressed by the butler's cunning ability to survive her terrifying grandfather. Circe deeply contemplates her next move, realizing she needs a countermeasure against her grandfather. Malrisha rushes down the stairs looking for her father, while Circe happily recognizes her mother. Upon hearing her father left, Merlisha smugly claims he ran away to hide his love. Malrisha declares absolute victory, completely ignoring the butler's sweat-dropping comment about her father's swift departure. Malrisha happily coddles Circe while the butler internally notes it was actually a total defeat. Circe looks at her doting mother with a slightly confused expression as she is hugged. Merlisha explains that she has been sending portraits of Circia to the grandfather all along. Melcher proudly claims she stopped sending portraits, forcing the grandfather to visit out of curiosity. Circia is completely baffled by her mother's wild, illogical victory claim over her grandfather. Circia realizes her grandfather is Sedful Emblem, the strict man who called her an anchovy. While the adults enthusiastically celebrate grandfather's alleged love, Circia internally cries out in despair. Circia wails in protest, completely rejecting the idea that her terrifying grandfather actually loves her. Ilertia affectionately cuddles her, leaving Circia feeling totally misunderstood by her overly optimistic mother. A lavish spread of rich, rare delicacies is presented to help Circe grow bigger. Circia releases a deep, exhausted baby sigh at the massive feast before her. Circia trembles at the table, feeling the suffocating literal weight of her grandfather's love. Completely stuffed and sweating, Circia stares in absolute horror at the endless delicacies. With a sudden crash, Circia flips the table and runs away from the overbearing feast. Plates and food fly everywhere as the panicked butler ducks for cover in the chaos. Circia flees in tears, regretting her past appearance as her butler chases after her. A white-haired boy, Enoch, is introduced to his future fiancée, Circia, through a portrait. With a sudden crash, young Enoch angrily knocks the portrait of Circia to the floor. Circia reflects on her lifelong enemy, Enoch, calling him the biggest headache of her existence. Young Enoch forcefully steps forward on the fallen portrait with a cold, defiant glare. Daniel ponders who her absolute favorite person in the entire household is. Circia struggles to finish her massive meal as Benedict asks if she's finally done eating. Excitedly reaching her arms out, the red-haired baby eagerly welcomes Benedict into the dining hall. Benedict rescues Circia from the endless feast, comforting her as she cries about being overfed. Circia claps her hands in delight, thrilled that Benedict perfectly understands her culinary struggle. Circia deeply appreciates her father's uncanny ability to understand her feelings better than anyone else. Circia admires Benedict's exceptionally handsome features and gentle smile as he cradles her warmly. Butler desperately pleads for them to stay, noting there are still 12 courses left to serve. Benedict reads a classic bedtime story to Circia, who secretly finds the simple tale surprisingly entertaining. When asked if she wants more, Circia eagerly nods, impressing Benedict with her apparent love for books. Butler suddenly enters to announce that the intimidating family head is currently on his way. Benedict assumes the patriarch arrived early out of love, but Circia remains highly skeptical. Circia internally complains about her grandfather's overbearing presence, finding his arrogant attitude incredibly annoying. Benedict gently pats her head, assuring Circia that her grandfather's harsh words actually stem from deep affection. Circia wonders if her father's reassuring words could actually be true as he strokes her hair. Circia recalls that the expensive, rare delicacies sent to her required directly hunting formidable beasts. Circia realizes the sheer effort her elderly grandfather must exert to personally source such rare, high-quality food. The imposing, red-bearded patriarch bluntly criticizes Circe's small frame, comparing her limbs to rotten branches. Benedict warmly greets the patriarch while Circia fumes in silent, baby-faced outrage over the harsh insult. The patriarch continues his harsh criticism, comparing Circe's feisty attitude to that of her mother. Circia's patience snaps as she throws a massive baby tantrum, completely exasperated by his attitude. Benedict hilariously translates the patriarch's harsh criticisms into compliments, leaving Circia utterly dumbfounded. The grandfather stammers in protest, desperately trying to deny his son's incredibly generous translation. Quickly shifting the subject, the red-bearded patriarch awkwardly asks if the young girl has started walking yet. An awkward, tense silence fills the hallway as the grandfather stands stiffly waiting for an answer. Circia panics as Benedict proudly boasts to the patriarch about her impressive early walking abilities. Benedict confidently assures the stunned patriarch that Circia can already balance perfectly and even run. The patriarch turns absolutely livid upon hearing that he missed his granddaughter's precious first milestones. A sudden, thunderous tremor shakes the entire castle as a powerful wave of ore erupts. Terrified by the sudden castle-shaking vibrations, Circia tightly clings to her father's clothes for safety. Enveloped in a blazing red aura, the patriarch charges off in a fit of extreme disappointment. Roaring in pure rage, the grandfather smashes through the castle walls, hunting down his rival. Circia is left utterly speechless by her grandfather's terrifyingly superhuman speed and destructive exit. Circia discovers that Jade Grey, the head of the rival house, deliberately orchestrated this chaotic conflict. A letter reveals Jade Grey's smug confession about witnessing his own grandson's first steps while mocking his rival. Stirring her soup, Circia reconsiders her grandfather's actions, finding a trace of awkward love beneath his harshness. Fully accepting his odd affection, Circia happily eats her soup as her doting butler dances with joy. The scene transitions to the magnificent palace of the rival family, the Grey Ducal House. Dressed in a beautiful frilly purple gown, Saoirse grumbles internally about having to dress up like a doll. Saoirse's parents weep with absolute joy at her angelic look, much to her intense embarrassment. Her mother excitedly gossips with Benedict about the possibility of baby Enoch falling hopelessly in love with Saoirse. Saoirse throws a massive tantrum at the mere mention of her bitter past life enemy becoming her fiancé. Saoirse nervously realizes that meeting her lifelong rival at such a young age completely ruins any future romantic tension. Panicking, Saoirse frantically tries to escape the room, determined to avoid this dreadful meeting at all costs. A maid enters the room to formally announce the arrival of the guests from the Grey family. A confident, silver-haired military commander, Dana, strides inside alongside her husband holding baby Enoch. Mauricia and Dana share an extremely joyful, tight hug, celebrating their long-awaited reunion. Saoirse stands quietly, her golden eyes wide as she prepares herself to face her destined rival. Melrosha holds Dana's hand, eagerly offering to finally introduce her lovely young daughter. Dana eagerly gasps in adoration, praising Cersei's lovely appearance while Benedict proudly holds his daughter. Dana jokingly suggests taking Cersei home, but Benedict flatly refuses her playful proposal. Mauricia suggests that Dana introduce baby Enoch, prompting Dana to awkwardly agree. Melrosha calls Edward over to present the baby, and he steps forward with baby Enoch. Edward encourages baby Enoch to greet everyone, but the infant only responds with a small grunt. Saoirse finds baby Enoch's eyes unsettling as they are placed near each other. Benedict gently reassures Saoirse and urges her to say hello to Enoch. Looking at her rival triggers an intense visceral disgust in Saoirse. Dana asks Enoch to greet Saoirse while Melrosha gushes over their cute, awkward interaction. Overcome by dizziness and a sudden surge of past-life hostility, Saoirse feels an uncontrollable urge to hit Enoch. Saoirse snaps and physically punches Enoch, prompting a panic scream from her mother. Saoirse stands stunned by her own rash action while Enoch cowers in shock. Saoirse inwardly defends her actions, noting that Enoch's gaze seemed just as aggressive. A wave of panic overcomes Melrosha as she stands frozen by her daughter's violent outburst. Benedict and Edward exchange silent, horrified looks, realizing Saoirse actually punched the baby. The room reels in shock as baby Enoch whimpers on the carpet after the sudden blow. A loud cry of distress bursts from Enoch as he begins to weep. Saoirse realizes that Enoch is charging forward, seemingly attempting to retaliate through his tears. Saoirse mockingly notes Enoch's tiny, non-threatening size as he prepares to charge. Refusing to let her rival hit her, Saoirse smoothly dodges Enoch's emotional retaliation. Enoch misses completely and trips onto the floor, wailing in utter defeat. Saoirse smugly reflects that dodging a baby is child's play for a former South Korean detective. An incredibly awkward, heavy silence fills the room as the adults stare at the fallen baby. Dana pulls a crying Enoch away, scolding him for attempting to attack Saoirse. Saoirse notices her mother approaching while Dana quietly appreciates her son's feisty nature. Saoirse turns around nervously as her mother stands over her with an imposing aura. Melrosha sternly demands an explanation for the violence, while Saoirse tries to lie that Enoch simply fell. Mercilessly insists that they cannot ruin the meeting and orders Saoirse to apologize to Enoch. Mauricia eagerly offers Saoirse's apology, but Dana politely declines to make a big deal of it. Saoirse's nausea flares up again just as her mother tries to make her blow on Enoch's bruise. Unable to contain herself, Saoirse accidentally vomits a colorful stream directly onto baby Enoch's face. The mothers are frozen in complete, unadulterated horror at the absolute disaster before them. Saoirse laughs nervously in embarrassment, fully realizing she just ruined her first meeting with her rival. The scene transitions as the family carriage rolls back home on the cobblestone road. Benedict gently warns his wife to be careful as she steps down from the carriage. Benedict catches his dizzy, stumbling wife as she exits the carriage after the stressful day. Benedict expresses deep concern for his exhausted wife, while Saoirse worries about her mother's state. Melrosha laments ruining the highly anticipated meeting, leaving Saoirse feeling a deep sense of guilt. A booming voice demanding Cersei's presence interrupts them, leaving the young baby completely baffled. The red-bearded patriarch charges forward in absolute ecstasy, celebrating Cersei's violent act against their rivals. Cersei points a trembling finger in disbelief, realization slowly dawning on her about her grandfather's reaction. While everyone else was disappointed, Cersei's grandfather is absolutely thrilled and dotes on his feisty granddaughter. Years later, a maid frantically calls out Cersei's name as she searches the dense castle forest. Now a young child, Cersei hides in the forest, startled by how quickly her maid, Cecilia, tracked her down. Cersei glances around nervously as Cecilia warns her that the upcoming banquet is about to begin. Cecilia lectures Circia about ruining her dress, revealing it was designed by a famous designer. Circia gasps in horror upon realizing she has accidentally ruined a dress worth an entire house. Cecilia storms off in frustration, leaving Circia feeling incredibly guilty for her constant troublemaking. Circia sneaks through the forest, admitting she only ran away to avoid seeing her rival Enoch. Confident she escaped her pursuers, Circia reflects on her ongoing, highly unpleasant encounters with Enoch. Circia happily perks up her ears as she hears the sound of a nearby stream, finding the perfect hiding spot. Circia runs through the sunny forest, complaining about her family problems and questioning Enoch's popularity with girls. She races toward the sound of water, looking forward to drinking, sunbathing, and taking a peaceful nap. A sudden gasp escapes Circia as she spots a silver-haired boy sitting directly in her path. Enoch sits calmly on a boulder in the forest, wearing an elegant silver-trimmed white uniform. Circia and Enoch instantly bicker, with both children claiming they hid in the woods to avoid each other. Their mutual annoyance flares as Circia snaps at him, while Enoch reacts with cool, dismissive indifference. Circia points at the stream and demands he leave, but Enoch firmly argues that he arrived first. With a quiet thud, Enoch lies back on the soft grass, smugly telling her she should leave. Circia shakes her fist, completely infuriated that her mature adult brain keeps losing arguments to a child. Circia suddenly stops fuming as she notices a decorated object hanging at Enoch's waist. Splashing onto a mossy stepping stone, Circia loudly asks Enoch what he is carrying at his side. Circia excitedly asks if the weapon is real, while Enoch looks back at her with confusion. Pointing directly at his hip, Circia eagerly demands to know if it is a real sword. A close-up reveals the beautifully sheathed weapon as Enoch explains it was gifted by his family head. Circia questions his sword training, and Enoch proudly explains he must learn swordsmanship as a gray heir. Enoch asks if she has started her own training, reminding her of her prestigious emblem family name. Circia weakly agrees, silently noting that her background naturally sparks a curiosity about martial weapons. Circia secretly admires the beautiful sword, finding it annoying that her rival obtained one before her. Remembering her exhausting past life as a detective, Circia deeply dreads the hardships of physical training. When Enoch asks why she has not started training, Circia admits she dislikes the pain and effort. Enoch violently grabs Circia's collar, furiously shouting that she cannot simply avoid learning swordsmanship. Shaking Circia, Enoch fiercely commands her to fulfill her duties as the sole heir of House Emblem. Covering her mouth, Circia threatens to punch and throw up on him again if he doesn't let go. Circia sighs in relief as Enoch quickly backs away, though he still questions her lack of training. Enoch visibly trembles with deep frustration when Circia casually confirms she will not practice swordsmanship. Circia reacts in utter confusion when Enoch suddenly claims that her lack of training makes her boring. Enoch smugly provokes her, declaring that her weakness will cause the decline of the prestigious House Emblem. Circia is left utterly speechless and insulted by Enoch's arrogant taunt. A dark, tense silence falls as Circia lowers her head, her anger slowly rising. The furious roar, Circia explodes with a blazing red aura, screaming at him to shut up. Enoch continues his smug lecture about her weakness and her family's decline as Circia silently cedes. Circia whispers a cold, threatening remark, her face shadowed with pure fury. Enoch's smugness instantly vanishes, replaced by absolute terror as he realizes he has unleashed a monster. With a loud thwack, Circia delivers a powerful flying punch directly into Enoch's face. Circia thoroughly beats Enoch to a pulp, reflecting that despite his maturity, he is still just a child. Maricia punishes Circia by making her hold a heavy wooden bucket of water above her head. Melarcia sternly asks if she understands her mistake, noting that Circia beat Enoch far too harshly. Holding the dripping bucket, Circia reluctantly apologizes while silently complaining about her aching arms. Circia poutingly justifies her actions, thinking Enoch deserved the beating for provoking her first. Merlicia scolds her daughter for talking back and demands she show proper reflection for her violent behavior. Suddenly, the door slams open as the red-bearded patriarch boisterously asks if Circia beat up their rival's child. The patriarch joyfully lifts Circia into the air, celebrating her glorious physical victory over their rivals. Circia's eyes tear up with sudden emotion as she looks at her supportive grandfather. The red-bearded patriarch is completely taken aback and frantically asks his granddaughter why she is crying. Sobbing loudly, Circia complains that Enoch insulted her and called her boring for not learning swordsmanship. Circia cries that Enoch predicted her family's decline, asserting her own pride as an honorable emblem. The patriarch bursts into laughter, proudly hugging Circia and praising her as an honorable emblem. Merlicia looks on in complete speechlessness while the patriarch continues to boast about his granddaughter's pride. Night falls over the grand castle, casting a serene blue light across the balcony under a full moon. Tossing in bed, Saoirse rubs her aching arms, still feeling deeply misunderstood by her mother. Saoirse is startled awake in her bedroom when she hears her door creaking up and in the dark. Saoirse decides to pretend to sleep to avoid talking to whoever is entering her dark bedroom. Merlisha looks down at her sleeping daughter with a sorrowful expression as Saoirse silently notices her presence. Melarcia gently touches Saoirse's arm, expressing remorse for scolding her harshly, while Saoirse silently winces in pain. Melrishia applies a soothing green ointment to Saoirse's arm while revealing that Enoch also ran away after being scolded. Mercia sadly regrets prioritizing political harmony over her own daughter's feelings, admitting she deeply hurt the children. Mersha tearfully apologizes to Saoirse, declaring that her daughter is more precious to her than anything else. Melursa kisses Saoirse gently on the cheek to comfort her before leaving her to rest. Melrusha prepares to leave, reflecting that Saoirse's anger today showed her rising pride as an emblem heir. Merlisha warmly wishes her daughter a good night, deeply proud of how much she has grown. Saoirse sits up in bed alone, her eyes filled with tears from her mother's heartfelt confession. Saoirse clutches her bedsheet in confusion, wondering why such a warm maternal gesture makes her feel so scared. Saoirse recalls her past life, where her abusive biological parents died and she was placed in an orphanage. A wealthy couple visited the orphanage, offering to adopt Saoirse and promising to love and cherish her forever. Young, dark-haired Saoirse smiled brightly at the kind-seeming man, feeling a rare moment of pure hope. Saoirse happily accepted their hand, believing her past loneliness was finally at an end. The memory shifts as a police line blocks a chaotic crime scene buzzing with frantic voices. Saoirse watched in shock as paramedics wheeled a covered body away from the building. Saoirse gasped in horror upon recognizing her adoptive father's distinct watch dangling from the stretcher. A police officer quickly restrained Saoirse as she desperately tried to cross the police tape. Dragged away, Saoirse refused to believe the police claims that her adoptive parents had committed suicide. Saoirse dedicated her past life to becoming a detective, driven by her disbelief regarding their sudden deaths. Showing her detective badge, Saoirse reflects that she grew up entirely devoid of genuine parental love. Back in the present, Saoirse trembles with fear that her kind new mother might suddenly disappear. Saoirse reflects on this unfamiliar warmth, realizing she has never experienced such deep maternal care before. Smiling through her tears, Saoirse admits she is deeply terrified but incredibly happy in this new life. Saoirse steps out onto her castle balcony to clear her head under the serene moonlight. The cool night air energizes Saoirse, helping her dismiss her lingering frustration regarding Enoch's insults. Saoirse hilariously fumes as a chibi, mocking Enoch for his arrogant pride over basic wooden swordsmanship. Cersei's laughter is suddenly cut short by a mysterious rustling sound from the garden below. Alerted by the noise, Cersei appears over the balcony railing to investigate the source. Cersei spots a small figure moving in the bushes, suspecting an intruder has entered the grounds. Cersei peers closer, spotting a silver-haired boy sitting quietly in the foliage under the moonlight. Cersei narrows her eyes, immediately realizing that the nighttime intruder is actually Enoch. Cersei sneaks down to the garden, finding Enoch kneeling on the ground while rubbing his bandaged face. Cersei watches in confusion as Enoch quietly pulls grass and weeds from the soil. The two children startle each other, immediately bickering about what they are doing in the garden. Enoch nervously holds up the pulled weeds, sheepishly claiming he is simply clearing the garden. Enoch glances sideways with a blushing, bandaged face, looking incredibly nervous in her presence. Cersei folds her arms, looking entirely unconvinced and utterly baffled by his strange behavior. Cersei turns to leave, prompting a panicked Enoch to quickly reach out and stop her. Cersei demands he speak quickly, reminding him that search parties will find him soon since he ran away. Cersei is taken aback by Enoch's unusual hesitation, wondering why her arrogant rival is acting so shy. Enoch sheepishly scratches his head, blushing as he offers a quiet apology. Enoch admits he felt terrible for insulting House Emblem and her decision to avoid learning swordsmanship. Looking directly at Cersei, Enoch sincerely declares his desire to apologize properly for his hurtful words. Cersei walks directly toward Enoch, leaving him startled by her sudden approach. Cersei gently reaches out and cradles Enoch's bandaged cheek, catching him completely off guard. Cersei leans in close, inspecting his bruised cheek as Enoch blushes in absolute shock. Cersei brings her face extremely close to Enoch's, staring deeply into his startled blue eyes. Enoch's blue eye widens in absolute shock and confusion as Cersei cradles his bruised cheek. Startled by her closeness, Enoch frantically screams and pushes Cersei away, sending her tumbling backward. Cersei complains about him making a fuss, while a blushing Enoch sheepishly apologizes for pushing her so hard. Clasping her arms, Cersei remarks that Enoch is acting completely unlike his usual arrogant self. Enoch hesitates, looking down with a dejected expression as sweat beads on his blushing face. Enoch explains that his aunt is leaving tomorrow, though he weakly claims he does not care. Circia accuses him of sulking, prompting a highly offended Enoch to furiously deny her claim. Enoch explains he took up swordsmanship for someone else's sake and questions his aunt's intense anger today. Enoch dejectedly squats on the grass, complaining that his family situation is simply too unfair. Circia watches him, silently noting that he is transitionally sulking despite his loud denials. Stepping closer, Circia softly asks the dejected boy if he is actually crying. Circia leans in with a smug grin, teasingly asking him again if he is shedding tears. Outraged, Enoch screams that his mother was banished from their mansion because of their engagement. Circia gasps in shock as Enoch passionately details his painful daily struggles with sword training. Enoch explains that his grandfather promised to bring his mother back if he defeats House Emblem. Enoch asserts that Circia must learn swordsmanship so he can win a duel against an emblem. With tearful determination, Enoch desperately begs Circia to finally pick up a sword and train. Circia quietly realizes that Enoch's anger stemmed from his desperate need to reunite with his mother. Enoch asks if she finally understands his plight, but Circia quickly stops him with this sudden realization. Circia bluntly questions why he automatically assumes he would defeat her if she actually trained. Enoch confidently retorts that Circia only plays around all day, leaving her feeling deeply insulted. Circia trembles with growing rage, silently fuming that Enoch has a natural talent for irritating her. Seeing her trembling fist, a terrified Enoch retreats and asks if she plans to hit him again. Pointing a determined finger, Circia fiercely vows that she will never lose to him in a duel. Enoch's blue eye goes wide as her sudden declaration of rivalry takes him completely by surprise. As Circia turns to leave, a thrilled Enoch shouts after her, celebrating her acceptance of their rivalry. A deep-seated sense of competition begins to form between Circia and Enoch under the starry night. The peaceful silence is shattered by a fierce battle cry as the scene shifts to daylight. Circia violently strikes a wooden training dummy, unleashing her explosive energy upon the target. Gritting her teeth, Circia delivers a powerful overhead strike to the top of the dummy. Circia repeatedly batters the wooden target as her physical trainer, Lawrence, watches her progress in astonishment. Lawrence nervously clears his throat, attempting to get the highly focused young lady's attention. Lawrence frantically commands her to stop her assault, prompting Circia to lower her wooden sword. Circia casually asks if her form is wrong, prompting a baffled reaction from her trainer. Lawrence sighs wearily, muttering that Circea's intense hatred for House Grey proves she possesses true emblem blood. With a sudden sharp gaze, Lawrence demands to know if she truly wishes to defeat her rival. Circia loudly confirms her absolute desire to beat Enoch in a duel with her sword. Lawrence warns her that reckless swinging will lead to defeat, terrifying Circia at the mere thought of losing. To correct her form, Lawrence sternly orders her to run 5 more laps around the training field. Circia screams in anguish, reluctantly agreeing to her master's harsh physical punishment. Running across the dusty field, Circia fumes that she would rather die than lose to Enoch. Circia reflects that while her motivation is simple spite, the public views their rivalry as a grand political conflict. Circia's mother and father watch with deep concern, worried about the sudden intensity of her training. Meanwhile, Circea's red-bearded grandfather boisterously laughs and celebrates her rising pride, much to her mother's annoyance. News of the dramatic duel challenge quickly spreads to the common folk inside a bustling tavern. The local tavern patrons animatedly discuss the shocking rumors of a duel between the 2 young heirs. Men speculate that Circia and Enoch are competing for the prestigious title of the Emperor's Guard Knight. The excited patrons toast their mugs, eagerly celebrating the return of the fierce rivalry between the grand families. Meanwhile, a heavy red royal cape decorated with gold embroidery sweeps across the palace floor. A mysterious blonde man strides confidently toward his grand throne, bathed in the warm golden light of the imperial palace. Emperor Markian Leopold Rutinus rests majestically on his golden throne, exuding overwhelming authority. The golden-haired emperor inquires with deep intrigue regarding Circia Emblem's sudden interest in learning swordsmanship. The gray-haired servant confirms the mounting rivalry, prompting the emperor to anticipate long-awaited amusement for his people. The servant grows visibly anxious, noting the dangerous implications of involving mere 7-year-old children. The golden-haired emperor glares menacingly, sharply rebuking the servant for questioning his royal authority. Trembling with fear, the servant drops to his knees and desperately begs for forgiveness for overstepping. With a cunning grin, the emperor grants forgiveness before commanding the servant to retrieve a specific individual. The emperor reveals his plot to invite the competing heirs to meet the realm's next sovereign. A young golden-haired boy quietly reads a book, pondering the grand destiny of the noble houses. Looking up thoughtfully, the young boy wonders which family will serve as his faithful sword. Circea's mother serves tea, questioning if Circea's intense training has gone too far. Saoirse's red-bearded grandfather dismisses her concerns, though her mother fears the physical strain on their young daughter. Saoirse's grandfather proudly boasts of their resilient lineage, completely undeterred by Saoirse's intense competitive drive. Saoirse's mother rubs her temple, highly suspicious that someone is feeding Saoirse updates about Enoch. She notes Saoirse's relentless determination to outshine Enoch at any cost. Saoirse's red-bearded grandfather furiously shakes with anger, vowing to punish whoever is leaking the training updates. In a flashback, Lawrence pushes Saoirse to complete one more lap during their grueling practice. Lawrence passionately motivates the exhausted girl while Saoirse's grandfather secretly watches from the sidelines. Saoirse's grandfather surreptitiously whispers exaggerated rumors of Enoch's incredible training achievements into Lawrence's ear. Fueled by the rumor, Lawrence loudly commands Saoirse to match Enoch's 10 laps, shocking her. Back in hiding, the red-bearded grandfather snickers with immense satisfaction over his successful manipulation. Saoirse erupts in a blazing fit of competitive fury, screaming Enoch's name. Back in the present, Saoirse's sweating grandfather quickly excuses himself to deliver water to Saoirse. The butler suddenly bursts through the double doors, urgently calling for the family head. The butler presents a prestigious letter announcing a special invitation from the Imperial Palace. Mersha reviews the document with confusion, questioning why they received another invitation. The official document reveals a direct invitation addressed specifically to Saoirse Emblem for the tournament. Melrisha reacts with intense shock upon realizing Saoirse is invited to the Grand Imperial Hunt. Melrisha springs up in sheer panic, asking if Enoch also received the dangerous invitation. The butler confirms the high probability, leaving Melrisha deeply troubled by the Emperor's cryptic intentions. Melrisha slams her hand onto the table, protesting the harsh demands placed on the children. Melrisha trembles with dread at the prospect of sending Saoirse into a monster-infested forest. Mersha watches her husband playfully lift Saoirse outside, filled with an ominous sense of foreboding. Saoirse beams with pure, innocent joy under the warm sunlight. The scene shifts to the elegant territory of the Condrius Earldom.
A grand carriage arrives at the estate, escorted by noble knights on horseback.
Saoirse's father gently comforts his anxious wife, reassuring her that the tournament grounds are secure. Saoirse's father expresses absolute faith in their daughter, while Saoirse desperately covers her ears newby. 3 young noble girls inside the carriage weep hysterically, demanding to accompany Enoch to the tournament. Covered in stress, Saoirse begs the weeping children to remain quiet during the jury. A blonde girl argues passionately about marrying Enoch, escalating the dramatic tension inside the carriage. Saoirse furiously denies any interest in marrying Enoch, loudly declaring he is not her type. Saoirse dramatically claims she would rather marry her own father, stunning the 3 girls into silence. Saoirse mockingly compares Enoch to a stick, directing the girls' attention to the carriage window behind them. The 3 girls turn in unison, spotting Saoirse's father looking back at them. Saoirse's father radiates a sparkling, unbelievably handsome aura, leaving the young girls completely mesmerized. Struck by sudden infatuation, the 3 girls blush intensely, their hearts captured by his dashing looks. The girls hysterically change their minds, screaming their desire to marry Saoirse's father instead. Saoirse sighs in relief as the carriage door opens, glad their chaotic journey has finally ended. Carriages assemble outside the majestic castle of Condrius Earldom under a clear blue sky. Saoirse looks out the carriage window in absolute awe, amazed by the sheer glamour and the vast number of nobles gathered. A bustling crowd of high society nobles gathers inside the luxurious gold-gilded banquet hall. A dark-haired noblewoman excitedly declares her eagerness to speak with the esteemed guests while her companion watches in surprise. A noble lady rushes forward, her high heels clicking loudly against the polished ballroom floor. An announcement echoes through the grand hall, declaring the arrival of Duke Jade Grey. The silver-haired patriarch stands majestically beside Enoch as they make their grand entrance. Duke Grey sternly instructs Enoch to gain recognition at the tournament, since all the nobles are watching him. The patriarch demands Enoch prove his superiority over House Emblem, and the boy nervously agrees. Enoch nervously complies with his grandfather's harsh demands, sweat dripping down his cheek in a comical manner. Duke Grey leads Enoch to greet the families, while Enoch wonders if Saoirse has arrived yet. The guest remarks that the arrival of House Emblem would surely make the banquet hall much louder. Looking determined, Enoch silently resolves that Saoirse will never be better than him at swordsmanship. Enoch strides confidently forward, firmly believing that his superiority over Saoirse is an unchangeable fact. A heavy leather suitcase drops to the floor with a sudden soft thud. Saoirse sighs heavily and collapses face first against the wall, completely exhausted by her journey. Cecilia the maid sets the luggage down and bids Saoirse goodbye, which Saoirse casually acknowledges. Cecilia informs Saoirse that her parents are dining with the hosts, leaving her to eat alone. Saoirse is utterly shocked to learn she cannot see her parents on her special day. Cecilia cheerily bids Circe to call if needed, quickly closing the door behind her. Sweat dripping down her face, Circe realizes with horror that even Cecilia has left her alone. Circe tears up in despair, crying over being abandoned on her 7th birthday. Circe wonders if she has taken having birthday meals with her parents too much for granted. Throwing a dramatic tantrum on the floor, Circe screams about being left entirely alone. Wiping her tears, Circe wonders if she is crying from exhaustion or emotional fatigue. Circe climbs into bed, hoping a quick nap will make her feel better on her birthday. Circe peacefully falls asleep in her bed, a single teardrop still visible on her cheek. The bedroom door slowly and quietly creaks open, letting in a sliver of bright light. An affectionate hand gently brushes against Circe's sleeping face, expressing deep sympathy for her tears. A gentle hand strokes Circe's forehead with pure tenderness as she sleeps peacefully in bed. Cecilia shakes Circe awake, urgently telling her to rise, which leaves the girl groggy and confused. Circe protests when a blindfold is placed over her eyes, but Cecilia insists she follow her. Cecilia guides a confused Circe forward, promising that all will be revealed very soon. Circe complains about having a busy schedule today, completely unaware of what lies ahead. Cecilia quietly shushes the blindfolded Circe, guiding her gently by her small hand. Circe sighs that she just wanted to spend her birthday resting with her parents as Cecilia unties the blindfold. Bright confetti pops around Circe as her blindfold is removed, leaving her completely stunned. Circe's father holds out a large wooden gift box and wishes Circe a happy birthday. Circe's father explains how hard they worked to surprise her, urging her to open the gift. Circe bursts into tears of joy, realizing her parents would never forget her birthday. With mounting excitement, Circe carefully lifts the lid of the large wooden gift box. Circe gasps in absolute shock as her golden eyes widen at the gift inside the box. Tucked inside the red velvet lining lies a magnificent, beautifully crafted steel longsword. A close-up reveals a delicate inscription elegantly engraved upon the gleaming blade of the sword. Trembling with tears of gratitude, Circe looks up at her father in disbelief. In a flashback, Circe's father explained she was too weak for a real sword like Enoch. Remembering her past tantrum, Circe is deeply touched that her father handcrafted the weapon for her. Her father proudly presents a magnificent gold-embroidered blue emblem uniform to match her new knight status. Circe tries on the beautiful uniform, declaring it the absolute best birthday gift ever. Circe turns around to find a grand lineup of knights waiting behind her in the yard. Circe looks ahead in surprise, spotting her mother among the knights gathered in the courtyard. Circe is wide-eyed and startled, staring forward in complete shock at what is happening. Merlisha stands majestically in her uniform, confidently holding her sword before her. Circe asks if her mother now recognizes her as a true knight. Merlisha smiles excitedly, declaring that she will not go easy on her daughter. Circe tearfully thanks her mother, proudly mentioning how hard she has practiced. Circe gleefully presents her new sword, radiating confidence under a golden, glowing aura. Mercia eagerly challenges Circe to show the results of her training. Circe lunges forward with a fierce, dramatic shout as her foot firmly stomps the ground. A massive shockwave erupts with a blast of wind as Circe begins her attack. The powerful strike sends Circe flying backward through the air in a blur. Merlisha cheerfully compliments Circe's flight while her husband screams in sheer panic. Merlisha comically laughs off her excessive strength as her panicked husband orders a search. Dangling from a tree branch, Circe tearfully begs her mother to go easier next time. Circe quietly sips a sweet strawberry drink, trying to distract herself from her worries. Circe observes how incredibly popular her mother is as nobles crowd around her. Her father suggests Circe could be just as popular as the future emblem commander. Circe doubts her ability to match her mother, reflecting on her realistic limits. Circe clenches her fist, feeling insecure about her talent compared to Enoch's achievements. Circe feels deeply anxious about the tournament, dreading the possibility of losing to Enoch. Circe questions if her training is pointless if she fails to defeat Enoch. Circe feels an empty regret before being startled by someone calling out to Enoch. Circe is snapped back to reality, spotting Enoch surrounded by admiring young girls. Several young noble girls eagerly invite a composed Enoch to have cookies and dance. Enoch politely declines the girls' invitations, explaining he must remain with his grandfather. Enoch asks for forgiveness as Circe comically gags in disgust at his overly polite behavior. Circe mentally criticizes Enoch's mature speaking style, finding his adult-like demeanor highly irritating. Circe irritatedly glares at Enoch from a distance, thoroughly annoyed by his perfect attitude. Enoch looks back, prompting Circe to defensively question why he is glaring at her. Circe suddenly turns around in surprise, hearing that the emperor has arrived. The entire banquet hall erupts in excited murmurs at the arrival of the emperor. The majestic emperor waves to the crowd alongside the quiet, solemn young crown prince. Circe admires the emperor while nobles whisper about the crown prince's unexpected presence. Saoirse asks her father about the strange mood, and he explains the prince's illness. Her father shares details of the prince's fragile health, leaving Saoirse feeling sympathetic. The pale young crown prince stands silently, displaying a quiet and gentle demeanor. The crown prince suddenly blinks in surprise as his golden eyes lock onto someone. A soft, innocent smile graces the crown prince's face as he waves gently. Saoirse blushes, realizing they made eye contact and finding him frail but kind-hearted. Saoirse questions if divine power or the archbishop could completely heal the sick prince. Her father grimly explains that healing the prince doesn't protect him from his enemies. Saoirse is shocked to hear the prince is in danger, but her father dismisses it. Saoirse falls silent, deeply troubled by the realization that the young prince is threatened. Saoirse resolves that becoming the prince's sword is a knight's honor, fearing Enoch will take it. The fragile crown prince tightly holds a heavy, decorative book containing difficult academic material. Nobles enthusiastically praise the emperor as he and the young prince walk through the hall. Duke Grey approaches the emperor to exchange formal greetings after a long time apart. The emperor questions Enoch's rumored intelligence as Duke Grey proudly prepares to introduce him. Enoch politely introduces himself, earning warm praise and encouragement from the pleased emperor. Guided by his father, the polite crown prince steps forward to greet Enoch. The emperor excuses himself to enjoy the party, leaving Enoch to accompany the prince. Duke Jade Grey bows respectfully, promising the long-haired emperor that he will serve the crown prince well. Duke Jade Grey suggests to the emperor that having a close friend guard the lonely prince as an Imperial Guard knight would be highly beneficial. As the emperor and Duke Jade Grey walk away, the pale crown prince shakes hands with the polite silver-haired Enoch. Duke Jade Grey contemplates the emperor's obvious push, finding it suspicious that his family is being considered so readily. Duke Jade Grey reflects that while the Imperial Guard position historically belonged to House Emblem, Enoch's superior skill over Saoirse might change things this time. Looking at the quiet, silver-haired boy, Duke Jade Grey hopes that Enoch's genius will finally fulfill all of his family's grand ambitions. A sudden quick tap sounds as a voice enthusiastically greets the crown prince. Enoch looks on in surprise as the crown prince happily recognizes Saoirse's brown-haired father, Benedict. Benedict introduces his vibrant red-haired daughter, Saoirse, who stands proudly beside him in her new blue uniform. Standing amidst a shower of glowing petals, Saoirse introduces herself with a polite bow and a confident smile. The crown prince's eyes light up with sudden excitement upon hearing the name of House Emblem. The crown prince eagerly presents his heavy book to Saoirse, expressing how desperately he wanted to discuss it with someone his own age. With sparkling eyes, the crown prince asks Saoirse if she has read the book, noting it is required reading for children of their status. A sudden, wet cough sounds as the pale prince unexpectedly spits blood onto his book, causing Saoirse to shriek in absolute terror. A frantic commotion erupts as Duke Jade Grey and Benedict panic, while the prince sheepishly claims he merely got overexcited. Duke Jade Grey urges the prince to rest, while Benedict offers to summon a priest to attend to his fragile health. Saoirse vehemently objects when the coughing prince insists he is fine, pointing out his obvious distress. Looking closely at Saoirse, the prince silently begs her with wide, sparkling eyes to let him stay. Sensing the prince's silent plea, Benedict kindly suggests he rest today and visit their mansion at a later date, delighting the young royal. Saoirse watches the fragile prince, feeling deep pity for a child so sick that he cannot even play outside comfortably. Determined to cheer him up, Saoirse proudly promises to demonstrate the legendary sword techniques of House Emblem when he visits. A warm arrow of affection pierces the crown prince's heart as he stares at Saoirse in absolute adoration. Nodding happily, Saoirse bids the crown prince a warm farewell, wishing him a speedy recovery. Benedict bows politely to Duke Jade Grey, wishing him a pleasant evening at the banquet. Duke Jade Grey curtly offers to escort the prince to a priest, secretly impressed by Benedict's clever maneuvering to secure the prince's visit. Observing the departure, a sweating Enoch quietly admits his rising anxiety about his upcoming competition. The golden rays of dawn illuminate the lush green entrance of the mysterious Mitro forest. An announcer shouting through a megaphone declares the opening of the tournament gates to the aspiring knights. Grand announcement echoes across the grounds, welcoming everyone to the prestigious Mitro Forest hunting tournament hosted by the emperor. An eager crowd of noble spectators walks toward the tournament grounds, anticipation filling the air. Melrisha, clad in silver armor, holds Saoirse's shoulders and asks her daughter what lesson is most important. Saoirse confidently recites her mother's advice to keep her eyes on the prey, prompting Melrisha to ask what Saoirse is best at. Sleepy Saoirse scratches her head in confusion, wondering what her special talent is, as Melrisha cryptically hints she will find out soon. Benedict gently interrupts, reminding them that Saoirse must go, while Saoirse wonders if her mother meant potions. Benedict reassures a worried Saoirse that Saoirse will only face harmless herbivores in the youth section. Clenching her fist with a bright grin, Saoirse assures her mother that she is incredibly strong and not to worry. With a cheerful shout, Saoirse gleefully runs off toward the forest to join the tournament. Saoirse dashes away into the distance, ignoring her mother's frantic warning that losing is better than getting hurt. Realizing her mistake, Saoirse quickly covers her mouth in shock, realizing she yelled the exact opposite of what she meant. Cersei's eyes burn with fierce determination, resolving to defeat Enoch before he grows any stronger. Sprinting forward with unmatched speed, Cersei vows to catch far more prey than Enoch. A sharp electrical spark startles a blonde-haired boy standing at the edge of the forest. The blonde boy turns around in confusion, uttering a quiet question to the red-haired girl standing nearby. Cersei introduces herself with a polite wave, but the boy awkwardly begins to explain something else. Cersei suddenly gasps in shock, frantically asking if the tournament has already started and where Enoch is. Cersei screams in utter disbelief upon realizing that Enoch has already run ahead into the forest without telling anyone. With a furious shout, Cersei dashes into the woods, leaving the blonde boy and his friend utterly bewildered. Scratching his head, the blonde boy mutters that he was actually trying to warn her to give up. The boys decide to stay put, noting that Cersei is clearly indifferent to them, unlike the other competitive nobles. A sudden soft thud sounds as two fluffy brown rabbits tumble over on the forest floor. Startled by a sudden sound, Cersei discovers the two boys in the forest and questions what they are doing. Cersei warns the boys that they will lose at this rate, but they explain they are organizing her scattered prey. Cersei insists on taking over the cleanup so that the two boys can go back to hunting. The dejected boys explain that winning or losing is troublesome because no one cares about lower nobility. Cersei is shocked to hear their concerns about being labeled traitors for disrupting the main event. The boys lament that trying hard is pointless because the outcome of their efforts is disregarded. A rattling sound echoes as Cersei tightly grips her sword hilt in silent frustration. Cersei furiously yells at the boys, declaring that they are entirely wrong about everything. Bright sunlight filters through the forest as Cersei proclaims this situation is like winning the lottery. The confused boys question her meaning, but Cersei confidently asserts they won't become traitors by winning. Cersei explains that while nobles expect to watch the clash of the great houses, another fire could steal the show. Grinning mischievously, Cersei compares the rivalry of their families to fires breaking out at major houses. Raising her gloved finger, she poses a riddle about a neighboring house blazing brighter than the original fires. She questions if anyone would really blame a third party for providing a more exciting spectacle. Cersei smiles confidently at the boys, letting her dramatic comparison sink in. Cersei asks if they would enjoy the new spectacle, leaving the boys completely speechless. Unsheathing her ornate sword, Cersei notes that defeating either of them would get the boys recruited. Winking playfully, Cersei jokes about them defeating a genius like herself and a mediocre Enoch. Her rallying cry is interrupted when Enoch suddenly appears carrying a massive wild boar. Enoch blankly repeats her insult about him being mediocre, his gaze perfectly flat. Cersei laughs nervously while Enoch calmly prepares to recite some wisdom from his grandfather. As the heavy boar slides to the ground, Enoch reflects on birth, appearance, and winning. A majestic aura of blooming white and purple flowers surrounds Enoch as he stands proudly. Surrounded by roses, Enoch solemnly asks the boys if they spoke with their swords today. The blonde boy jumps up in surprise, nervously admitting they haven't said anything yet. The blonde boy hesitantly notes that not everyone has a strong heart like they do. The blonde boy trembles in fear as Enoch comes thoughtfully from off-screen. Cersei recognizes the blonde boy as Olivia Boldmore's brother, leaving him shocked. Cersei clutches her head as she recalls the agonizing carriage ride spent dealing with Olivia's crying. Cersei reveals she remembers his brother's dream to join the Emblem Knights, surprising him. Cersei offers a secret tip on how to make a great impression on the Emblem Commander. Giving a thumbs up, Cersei explains her mother respects those who refuse to give up, even in defeat. The blonde boy stares in stunned silence, a sweat drop running down his face. Comically bursting with electric energy, the blonde boy grabs his friend Emmett and fiercely charges off to hunt. Enoch offers the boys a 30-minute head start while he and Cersei wait behind. Cersei teases Enoch about just wanting to rest, but Enoch tells her to be quiet. Feeling motivated, the two boys draw their swords and resolve to show what they can do. With passionate shouts, the two boys sprint off into the woods to begin their hunt. Cersei giggles at how cute they are, but Enoch calls out to her. Cersei turns around in confusion, questioning what Enoch wants to discuss. Under the canopy, Cersei slowly draws her elegant sword from its scabbard. Cersei's golden eyes gleam with a sudden surge of excitement and sharp focus. Cersei reacts with overwhelming joy to Enoch's news, making him point out she seems happier than him. Enoch blushes slightly and playfully asks if she will go easy on him so he can win. Saoirse deadpans and bluntly declares she will crush him, which Enoch finds comfortably familiar. Smiling warmly, Enoch admits he prefers it that way, and that is why he told her. Saoirse leans in close, noting with surprise that Enoch no longer gets sick when she is nearby. Saoirse recalls how she used to feel incredibly nauseous whenever she looked at Enoch's eyes. She notes his handsome eyes are captivating, but feels stranger the more she looks at them. Faint light sparkles as Saoirse feels an inexplicable sense of familiarity, trying to recall a distant memory. Blushing furiously, Enoch demands Saoirse step back, prompting her to apologize for her lack of spatial awareness. Suddenly appearing in the forest, Olivia tearfully screams at them not to marry each other, leaving both completely bewildered. Fuming with tearful jealousy, the young girl glares ahead with an angry, puffed-out expression. Stomping determinedly, the crying young girl marches forward through the forest dirt. Olivia tearfully accuses Saoirse of being a liar for breaking her promise to marry her father, while Saoirse wonders how she got here. Sobbing loudly, Olivia screams that Saoirse promised to marry her father instead of Enoch. Clutching her head in dizzy disbelief, Saoirse frantically tries to explain that marriage is not the priority right now. Saoirse scolds Olivia for entering such a dangerous area, but Olivia defensively argues that the youth course is safe. Enoch politely explains that the forest is dangerous without a sword and restricted only to participants, startling a blushing Olivia. Enoch warns Olivia that she must confess how she snuck into the Emperor's tournament to avoid severe consequences from her family. Terrified of her parents finding out about her reckless actions, Olivia gasps in sheer panic. Olivia begs them to keep her secret, prompting Enoch to suggest they quickly escort her out before her brother arrives. Saoirse worries that being caught assisting a trespasser could ruin her or Enoch's prospects at such a prestigious event. Saoirse silently blames the crying girl, who desperately pleads on behalf of her hardworking brother's reputation. Saoirse ponders deeply on how to resolve this delicate situation without causing any trouble. Saoirse contemplates how to protect Osric's honor while safely smuggling his crying little sister out of the woods. Tension mounts as Saoirse nervously makes a decision under Enoch's steady waiting gaze. The tournament tents stand tall against the backdrop of distant mountains under a bright sky. A regal, white-gloved hand is raised gracefully to command silence or attention. Sitting on his grand golden throne, the Emperor receives a quiet message from his armored knight. Swirling his glass of red wine, the Emperor's amused smirk prompts the young crown prince to ask what he is smiling about. Swirling his red wine, the Emperor eagerly asks the crown prince for his prediction on the tournament winner. The young crown prince cheerfully predicts that House Grey will win, prompting the Emperor's curious questioning. The crown prince explains that while the Emblem Knights are formidable, they prioritize protecting the weak over winning. The vast sunny forest looms as the crown prince notes that Saoirse's protective nature could cost her the match. The crown prince concludes that Saoirse will surely lose her tournament match if she is forced to protect someone. Taking a sip of his wine, the Emperor silently muses that this complication makes the game much more intriguing. Saoirse desperately puzzles over how to resolve this mess and still defeat her rival Enoch. Saoirse bitterly recalls all the exhausting effort she put into preparing for this match. Saoirse battles with her conscience, wondering if she should sacrifice the brother's reputation since it is Olivia's fault. A wave of quiet frustration washes over Saoirse as she prepares to make a difficult sacrifice. Saoirse's sudden announcement of her forfeiture leaves Enoch staring at her in absolute disbelief. Teary-eyed and deeply moved, Olivia gasps Saoirse's name in sheer shock and gratitude. Saoirse offers her hand to Olivia, admitting her disappointment but refusing to prioritize winning over helping someone in need. Saoirse smiles warmly as she reassures Olivia that she doesn't want to win by ignoring others in trouble. Enoch stares in silent horror, processing the weight of Saoirse's self-sacrificing decision. Saoirse makes Olivia promise to stop whining about Enoch, while a frantic Enoch worries about his own tournament standing. Saoirse firmly tells Enoch he must continue the tournament alone, while a sheepish Enoch offers to help. Saoirse explains that walking together would only draw unwanted attention and ruin their chances if caught. Saoirse gently reminds Enoch of his own desperate need to win, a sentiment he solemnly agrees with. A majestic knight with silver armor and a long ponytail stands amidst blooming white roses. Saoirse playfully nudges Olivia, urging Enoch to win so he won't be embarrassed. Watching Saoirse go, Enoch silently acknowledges that Saoirse also had a deeply important reason to win. Saoirse warmly reassures Olivia as they begin their quiet journey back to the forest exit. Saoirse notices Olivia trembling violently just before the young girl points ahead in absolute terror. Saoirse gasps in horror as a monstrous, red-eyed boar demon with massive stag antlers suddenly emerges. Saoirse panics internally, wondering why a dangerous demon is still roaming the supposedly cleared forest. A sudden hot snort escapes the beast's snout as it glares at them with menacing red eyes. Instantly drawing her sword, Circe shields Olivia while recalling her mother's lessons about monstrous beasts. The salivating demon glares, driven by an insatiable, monstrous urge to hunt down and kill humans. Enoch notes the beast is low-grade, while Circe nervously confirms she already knows. Circe feels overwhelmed, doubting she can handle a monster that even the genius Enoch would struggle with. Circe trembles but realizes everyone will be in grave danger if she fails to stop the beast here. Circe forces herself to find the courage to stand and fight the approaching threat. Circe firmly grips her ornate golden sword, readying herself to confront the terrifying beast. Facing the beast with Enoch, Circe silently calls out to her father for strength. A heavy sigh escapes Circe as she tries to calm her racing heart. Heavy thuds of the monster's hooves echo as it slowly advances. Circe raises her sword high above her head, preparing to strike the charging beast. Circe sharpens her focus, bracing for the impact as the monster draws closer. With a deafening roar, the massive horned beast charges straight toward them. Circe remembers the crucial training advice to keep her eyes locked onto her prey. Circe questions what her ultimate strength is as the moment of impact arrives. Relying on hundreds of hours of practice, Circe swings her sword on pure instinct. She charges the towering beast, trust placed entirely in her body's trained memory. Circe strikes with incredible precision, slicing straight through the beast's massive antler. The blade cuts deep into the beast, drawing a sudden splash of dark blood. The wounded monster squeals in agony, prompting Circe to yell for Enoch to finish it. Circe's desperate cry snaps Enoch out of his daze, signaling his turn to strike. Gritting his teeth, Enoch charges forward as Circe screams for him to deliver the final blow. Leaping high into the air, Enoch launches his decisive attack against the beast. With a powerful shout, Enoch plunges a sword directly into the monster's neck. The blade pierces deep into the beast's skull, instantly paralyzing its final movements. With a final burst, the defeated monster crumbles and disintegrates into black ash. Enoch asks if they succeeded as Circe collapses onto the muddy ground in exhaustion. Circe lies panting heavily on the wet ground, completely drained of energy. Turning back, Enoch looks at Circe in shock and softly speaks her name. Enoch turns his head away, overwhelmed by a sudden wave of shame and self-reproach. Enoch blames himself for freezing up like an idiot while Circe fought the beast. Looking down at his bloody sword, Enoch bitterly concludes that this is the absolute worst. Enoch vividly recalls Circe's voice screaming at him to finish the beast off. Reflects that Circe's urgent cry was the only thing that forced his legs to move. The memory of plunging his sword into the monster flashes vividly in his mind. Enoch admits that Circe saved him by snapping him out of his frozen state. Blood slowly drips from the sword's hilt as Enoch tightly grips his weapon. Enoch acknowledges that this moment represents his complete defeat compared to Circe's bravery. Circe's bloody sword stands driven into the monster's remains as rain drips down. Circe collapses to the ground and asks if the harrowing ordeal is finally over. Olivia tearfully throws herself at Circe, who weakly reassures her that their trial continues. Olivia expresses deep gratitude through her tears, thanking Circe for saving her life. Circe smiles with relief but suddenly freezes as she hears rustling in the bushes. Circe demands to know who is hiding in the bushes as a voice quickly replies. Osric and Emmett emerge with their prey, shocked to find Olivia covered in blood. Osric gazes in disbelief at the massive monster corpse, mistaking Enoch for the hero. Circe quickly interrupts to credit Enoch with the hunt, warning of impending chaos. Circe urges Osric to take Olivia away immediately before anyone notices her trespassing. Osric agrees to escape with his sister, promising to explain the situation to her later. Emmett promises Circe to help guide the siblings out of the forest safely. The trio quickly retreats into the forest depths under the pouring rain. Circe sighs at her eventful day, only to be interrupted when Enoch calls her name. Circe asks Enoch if he is all right, but he solemnly questions why she lied about who hunted the beast. Enoch acts confused by her accusation, but Circe angrily tells him to stop playing dumb as a dark vision of her past life enemy overlaps his face. Circe gasps in absolute shock, pointing in terror as she recognizes the chilling resemblance. Covering her mouth in dread, Circe frantically wonders why her past life enemy's face is overlapping with Enoch's. Circe's legs shiver violently in the pouring rain as sheer panic completely paralyzes her. She bitterly recalls that her past life killer and the murderer of her parents had accomplices. A dark room is left in ruins with a shattered vase against a bright city skyline. She remembers the killer's right-hand man who managed the money and devised political strategies. A group of officers enters the dark room as a man in a suit watches silently. Looking out at the city, the man in the suit mockingly welcomes the detective back for their reunion. With a condescending smirk, Yoon Do-yoon arrogantly asks the detective if she delayed her arrival on purpose. The brown-haired detective glares back at him, her face contorted with intense anger and hatred. Dark background underscores her deep, burning rage toward her mortal enemy Yoon Do-yoon. Circia groans in sudden physical distress, prompting a concerned Enoch to call out her name in surprise. When Enoch tries to approach, Circia frantically yells at him to stay away, startling the young boy. Shivering in the rain, Circia desperately tries to comprehend why her past life enemy's phase overlapped with Enoch's. Enoch wipes the dark monster blood from his hair, worriedly asking if the blood is causing her discomfort. As Enoch asks how she feels now, Circia realizes her sudden nausea has stopped, attributing it to his hair color. Reassuring Enoch that she is fine, Circia reminds herself that Enoch is completely different from the despicable Yoon Do-yoon. While Enoch speaks up, Circia silently acknowledges that despite his rude demeanor, he is not a bad person. Enoch kneels under the pouring rain to retrieve Circe's falling golden sword from the mud. Enoch suddenly suggests they do something, leaving a baffled Circia to question what he means. Brandishing the sword, Enoch loudly demands that Circia draw her weapon so they can have a proper match. Circia reactively protests, pointing out that he was the one who defeated the monster despite lying to Osric. With a fierce and determined gaze, Enoch insists they settle who is truly superior with a sword fight. Circia yells that he delivered the final blow, but Enoch proudly declares his identity as a member of House Grey. Enoch proudly states that a victory handed to him by a member of House Emblem brings him no joy. Circia furiously barks back, explaining that she also desperately wanted to finish the beast off with her own hands. Circia screams at the top of her lungs, finally revealing the embarrassing truth that she simply dropped her sword. Circia looks at her injured hands, quietly admitting that she would have died if he had not stepped in. Enoch notices Circe's palms, silently noting with concern how torn up and ruined her hands are from the fight. Circia tightly clenches her fist, warning Enoch not to get cocky just because he won their encounter this time. Circia insists this is not a complete defeat, vowing she will have plenty of chances to prove herself. The two young rivals stand in silence as a heavy downpour of rain washes over them. Enoch walks away with a subtle, thoughtful expression, his cheeks slightly flushed under the rain. Enoch silently reflects on Circia's unwavering resolve to continue her journey in mastering swordsmanship. Circia touches her hair, silently admitting that despite Enoch's disagreeable attitude, she is grateful he inspired her to learn swordsmanship. Circe recalls the tearful gratitude in Olivia's eyes, realizing the profound impact of saving a life. She reflects deeply on her past life, remembering why she chose to become a detective. She remembers a grieving elderly couple tearfully thanking her for bringing peace and justice to their late daughter. Though she initially sought vengeance, helping others and becoming their salvation brought a deeper purpose to her life. A quiet transition captures her fond memory of the joy she felt when helping others. Circia looks down at her hands with a warm, gentle smile, realizing she has finally protected someone. She clenches her fist, thrilled by the lingering sensation of instinctively striking the monster's weak point. Overcome with pure happiness, Circia bursts into a bright, cheerful laugh that lights up her face. Enoch stares at her in absolute bewilderment, quietly calling out her name as she laughs. Softening his expression, Enoch quietly notes to himself that Circia looks truly happy. A spark of deep determination shines brightly in Enoch's clear blue eyes. High above, the tournament's grand emblem flag flutters majestically against the bright, confetti-filled sky. The roaring crowd erupts into deafening cheers, chanting Enoch's name as the tournament victor is announced. Amidst a rain of confetti and cheers, Enoch walks solemnly down the flower-lined red carpet. The murmuring crowd marvels at the young genius of House Grey who supposedly slain the monster. Overwhelmed by the undeserved praise, Enoch looks down in silent guilt and inner turmoil. Nobles toast to Duke Grey, who proudly declares that Enoch marks the dawn of their family's new era. Duke Grey casts a subtle, calculating glance toward the high seat during his celebration. The gold-eyed, blonde sovereign smiles knowingly while swirling his wineglass from his elevated throne. Duke Grey's expression turns chillingly cold under the intense gaze of the powerful sovereign. The sovereign mockingly praises Duke Grey's intellect, asking if he has already seen through the political trap. The sovereign sips his wine, noting that Enoch's triumph aligns perfectly with Duke Grey's ambitions. Placing a chess knight, the sovereign explains the political play that benefits Duke Grey's house. A dark, calculating glint flashes in the sovereign's golden eyes as he contemplates his next move. An ominous whisper asks his master to cooperate in this intricate game of power. Circe's parents stand among the crowd, their faces lined with deep anxiety and apprehension. Circe's mother turns in surprise as she is suddenly addressed by another attendee. Olivia and her mother step forward, nervously requesting to speak with the Duchess of House Elum. Circe's mother frantically begs Olivia's mother to lift her head as they bow in deep apology. Olivia's mother tearfully confesses that her daughter foolishly snuck into the tournament grounds after Circia. Circe's mother gasps in disbelief, suddenly realizing her own daughter was also in grave danger. Olivia chimes in to assure the worried mother that Circe only sustained minor hand injuries. Olivia tearfully blames herself for causing trouble and acting with complete disregard for safety. Letting out a soft, relieved sigh, Cersei's mother places her hand over her racing heart. Cersei's mother offers a breathtaking, gentle smile to ease the young girl's heavy guilt. Olivia and her mother stare in absolute awe, completely captivated by the Duchess's immense kindness. Kneeling down, Cersei's mother reassures Olivia that House Emblem simply performed its duty to protect. Cersei's mother politely excuses herself, walking away with her husband as Olivia bows respectfully. Nodding in agreement, Olivia and her mother admire how incredibly cool the Duchess of Emblem is. Cersei's father suddenly points toward the forest edge, catching his wife's immediate attention. Cersei pops out of the lush greenery, her golden eyes widening as she spots her parents. Her parents cry out her name in an emotional mix of sheer terror and profound relief. With a joyous leap and arms wide open, Cersei runs happily toward her parents. The family embraces in a tight emotional hug surrounded by a radiant warmth of love. Cersei's father asks if she had fun, receiving an energetic and cheerful response. Cersei eagerly tells her mother that she has made an important life-changing decision. Her parents look completely stunned as Cersei proudly declares her newfound love for swordsmanship. Bright, cute chuckle escapes Cersei as she beams with absolute happiness. Enveloped in her parents' warm embrace, Cersei feels safe and completely at peace. The scene shifts to young Enoch's memory of clashing wooden swords during intensive training. Enoch's teacher stresses that real combat leaves absolutely no time to think or hesitate. The teacher firmly instructs that swordsmanship must be committed to muscle memory, not thought. A powerful strike sends a piece of wood flying as the lesson reaches its peak. Bowing, the teacher praises Enoch's brilliant talent and concludes the day's training session. Enoch walks away quietly as passers-by continuously whisper praise about his tournament victory. While people herald House Grey's victory, Enoch bitterly recalls freezing when facing the monster. He silently acknowledges a secret and painful truth known only to him and Cersei. With a heavy heart, Enoch admits that Cersei bravely fought while he remained paralyzed. Seeking solitude, Enoch sits beneath a massive tree and rustles through his pockets. Unfolding a letter, Enoch despondently reflects that he is unworthy of his father's praise. The letter reveals his father's hope that Enoch's victory would earn his return home. Reading his father's promise to return if he succeeded, Enoch's guilt only deepens further. Enoch tightly clutches the letter containing his father's longing words, overwhelmed by silent tears. The young silver-haired boy clenches the letter, deciding that his current success is enough. Smiling warmly, the silver-haired boy eagerly anticipates seeing his mother soon. A stark announcement reveals that the Grey Knight commander, Dana Grey, has gone missing. The grand and sprawling estate of Grey Mansion stands tall against a bright sky. Swords clash fiercely during a training session, with onlookers noting the boy's outstanding talent. Swirling his wine, the Golden Knight Sovereign praises Enoch's rare genius in defeating a monster. The Sovereign turns to ask Duke Grey if he agrees with this high assessment. Duke Grey angrily accuses the Sovereign of playing a dangerous game by releasing the monster. A sudden light shrug accompanies the Sovereign's playful deflection about whether this was planned. The Sovereign casually denies any involvement, playfully insisting that he is entirely innocent. Duke Grey demands to know what scheme the Sovereign is plotting behind his back. Duke Grey furiously barks that playing with children's lives during a tournament is unacceptable. The Sovereign calmly justifies his actions as a necessary test for future commanders, claiming Enoch excelled. The Sovereign suggests this victory paves the way for Enoch to become the Emperor's sword. The Sovereign expresses his desire for House Grey to produce the Crown Prince's protector. The Sovereign places his hands firmly on the table over the official documents. Duke Grey silently contemplates his family's long-desired victory in their war against House Emblem. A tense gulp escapes the Duke as he questions the Sovereign's sudden generosity. The Sovereign passionately argues that the Empire desperately needs a sharp, quick-witted new knight. Close-up of the Sovereign's golden eyes as he praises Enoch Grey as a potential hero. Duke Grey admits Enoch is an excellent knight, but remains deeply skeptical of the Sovereign's true motives. An inner monologue questions the logic of granting such a high title solely based on genius. The silent question remains as to what the Sovereign is truly trying to achieve. Duke Grey walks solemnly past a large portrait of a white-haired woman in uniform. Overwhelmed by sudden stress, Duke Grey's legs buckle as his steps falter. Sinking heavily into a nearby chair, Duke Grey lets out a defeated, weary sigh. Holding his forehead, Duke Grey asks the Sovereign for permission to speak freely as his former teacher. Smiling warmly, the Sovereign happily invites his old master to speak his mind. Duke Grey directly asks Markian if something has happened to his daughter, Dana, in Crichton. Markian commends his master's sharp intuition, while a torn and bloodied gray flag lies ruined on the ground. Duke Gray realizes that promoting Enoch is a political bribe to keep his daughter's disappearance quiet. Markian coldly confirms the bargain, advising his master to settle his daughter's disappearance quietly. Chess pieces stand on a board as the narrative reminds us that this is cold-hearted politics. Duke Gray sharply asks Markian if this underhanded method is what he was taught. Markian looks startled and defensive as Duke Gray accuses him of hiding out of fear. Duke Gray accuses the sovereign of agonizing all night over what political bribe to offer him. Markian stammers an excuse about imperial interests, but Duke Gray demands he admit the truth. Duke Gray sternly lectures the sovereign, stating even the late emperor knew the value of accountability. Duke Gray demands that Markian apologize first before attempting to honor or bribe House Gray. Duke Gray warns that a ruler must face obstacles head-on or risk losing everything. Duke Gray explains his harsh lecturing is only to prevent Markian from making an enemy of Gray. Bowing respectfully, Duke Gray formally requests permission to take his leave. Markian turns away in quiet shame, admitting his foolishness and trying to outsmart his master. Markian calls out to his retreating master, begging for his help if he still cares for him. Markian reveals that his suspicions about a hostile threat are shared by all the nobles. Markian explains that the enemy has resorted to poison, assassins, and dark cursing rituals. Showing a red-haired youth surrounded by roses, Markian explains the desperate need for a fiercely loyal protector. Duke Gray pauses, noting that the sovereign finally looks like the disciple he remembers. A clenching fist on a map underscores the warning that chaos and political warfare will soon erupt. Duke Gray warns that the impending struggle for the throne will soon unleash a bloody storm. Markian warns Duke Gray that Enoch's connection to the Empress's family leaves him politically exposed regardless of who triumphs. Looking deeply serious, Markian implores his master to intervene and stop the Empress's plans. Duke Gray grimly acknowledges the situation, noting Enoch's father is the Empress's brother. Duke Gray laments the tragic fate of the young silver-haired boy being separated from his mother. Young Enoch's cheerful, innocent laughter from his childhood memories contrasts sharply with his grim present reality. The narrative reflects on the cruelty of sacrificing such a young child to a ruthless political struggle. The scene transitions to the Grand Emblem estate as Cersei's father wonders if she is ready. While being dressed by his valet, Cersei's father receives some unexpected news about his daughter. The butler reveals that Cersei refuses to attend the upcoming medal ceremony, surprising her father. Cersei's father decides to speak with her directly after the butler suggests personal intervention. Cersei's father knocks on his daughter's door and receives her energetic permission to enter. Opening the door, Cersei's father is taken aback by a lively, cheerful voice from inside. He is surprised to see Cersei resting in bed while interacting with the young guest. Cersei is resting in bed, happily explaining that Olivia and the maids have come to visit. Cersei's father nervously suggests to his daughter that her behavior might be impolite to their young noble guest. Cersei pouts defensively while Olivia confirms that Cersei indeed refused to attend the ceremony. Feeling overwhelmed by the young girls, Cersei's father politely requests a moment alone with his daughter. Cersei cheerfully asks Olivia for a brief moment to speak privately with her father. Sitting on her bed, Cersei's father remarks that her behavior strongly reminds him of her mother's childhood. Cersei's father smiles warmly as he notes how Melcia also started with just a few loyal followers. Cersei's father praises her, calling the duty to protect others a special privilege of a sword wielder. Cersei's father points out that the hunting tournament medal is one such privilege, questioning her refusal to attend. Cersei explains that Enoch was the one who actually defeated the monster, while her father mentions Enoch credited her brilliant thrust. Cersei quietly reaches her hand into a glass jar filled with colorful wooden building blocks. Her father gently asks if there is something else she desires instead of the medal. Cersei drops a block back into the jar, silent as she contemplates her true wishes. Cersei dramatically holds up her bandaged, splinted arm, declaring that her recovery is what truly matters. Her father looks confusedly at the splint as Cersei loudly complains about being banned from sword training. Cersei earnestly begs her father to allow her to resume her training sessions. Her father sweat drops, explaining that her recovery is strictly up to the doctor and the family head. Cersei worries about falling behind, imagining that Enoch is likely training hard at this very moment. Leaning against her father, Cersei apologizes for her whining but admits she is simply frustrated. Cersei's father sits quietly on the edge of the bed, gently comforting his dejected daughter. A close-up of the father's warm golden eye shows his deep affection and calculating thoughts. He gently reassures Cersei that there might still be a way for her to train. Cersei's father grins slyly, reminding her that he is the chief strategist of House Emblem. Cersei's eyes widen with sudden excitement and wonder at her father's suggestion. A refreshing glass of lemon juice is placed on a table at the grand gathering. Saoirse, dressed in elegant formal wear, politely accepts the drink from a blonde-haired boy. The blonde-haired boy in a blue uniform blushes, shyly thanking Saoirse for her brave actions. Saoirse casually points to her bandaged arm, explaining to the boy that her injury has not fully healed yet. The boy looks thoroughly confused as Saoirse proudly reveals she has switched to lower body training. Saoirse happily explains her father's training theory that an injured right arm simply means training the left. The young noble boy sweats in sheer disbelief at Saoirse's intense dedication to swordsmanship. Smiling warmly, the boy observes that Saoirse's eyes shine brightly whenever she discusses training. Saoirse beams with absolute joy, her golden eyes sparkling as she shares her passion. A sudden heavy hand claps onto the boy's shoulder, startling him with an abrupt, ominous presence. A stern and cold-faced Enoch appears behind the startled noble boy, staring intensely. Saoirse is left stunned as Enoch abruptly takes his leave, ignoring the gathering. Sipping her drink, Saoirse watches Enoch walk away, wondering why he seems so oddly tense. Enoch asks Saoirse if she remembers their engagement, to which she offhandedly agrees. Enoch stares intensely at Saoirse as she continues to sip her drink. Enoch closes his eyes and mutters that the crowded banquet hall is making him anxious. Saoirse wonders why Enoch wants to leave when he is the star guest, but he repeats that he is simply tired. Unseen voices mock the idea of Enoch being the main hero since he didn't actually land the finishing blow. The knights argue loudly, prompting Enoch to look back as someone credits him with saving an emblem's life. A smug, black-haired knight from House Grey loudly mocks the opposing faction's intelligence. The opposing knights quickly lose their tempers, trading harsh insults about their family's ranks. Enoch and Saoirse watching growing dread as the hostile knights prepare to clash right in front of them. Tension peaks as a knight begins to draw his sword, declaring a duel to prove superiority. Enoch panics and urgently suggests to Saoirse that they should go find an adult to stop the fight. Saoirse freezes in shock as her hand reflexively goes to her chest, startled by a sudden memory. Saoirse is suddenly gripped by a disturbing vision of a bloodied, silver-haired boy and a dark-suited detective. Shaken to her core, Saoirse gasps out a name in sudden panic. A haunting vision of the young boy and the detective lingers in Saoirse's mind. Saoirse's panic intensifies as the dark-suited man in her vision turns around to speak. Back in reality, Saoirse tightly clutches her bandaged chest as she tries to catch her breath. Meanwhile, the hostile confrontation between the two knight factions rapidly devolves into an all-out brawl. The knights prepare to charge, fully intent on settling their dispute with violence. A man dramatically falls forward into the middle of the crowd with an exaggerated cry. The fallen man lands heavily on his hands and knees right between the opposing factions. The startled knights look down in utter confusion, demanding to know who just pushed him. One of the leading knights points accusingly at the fallen figure in disbelief. Smiling brightly, Enoch's black-haired father smoothly greets the gathered emblem and Grey Knights. Enoch and Saoirse watch the sudden theatrical intrusion with wide-eyed shock. Enoch breaks into a cold sweat upon realizing the unexpected intruder is his own father. His father casually changes the subject, rambling about delicious, freshly baked bread to diffuse the tension. Sweating nervously, Enoch's father waves his hand as the confused knights reluctantly accept his presence. His father politely thanks the bewildered knights for their cooperation. Smiling warmly, Enoch's father takes Saoirse by the shoulder to escort her away. He gently guides Saoirse out of the tense hall while she readily agrees to follow. Looking back from behind a golden door, Enoch's father warmly tells the children to rest inside. Saoirse is left confused by his departure, while Enoch explains his father was simply giving them an escape route. A humorous chibi-style panel shows Saoirse clapping in admiration while Enoch sighs with folded arms. Their peace is briefly interrupted as Enoch's father pops his head back in to bid them farewell. Saoirse and Enoch politely express their gratitude to Enoch's father as he finally leaves. Saoirse adjusts her cape, wondering aloud if knights always resolve their differences through brawling. Saoirse cheerfully informs Enoch of his father's relaxed state nearby. Sensing his heavy gaze, Saoirse questions why Enoch is staring so intensely at her. Enoch confronts Saoirse about her odd behavior during the confrontation, but she feigns ignorance. Enoch remains highly skeptical, pointing out that she completely ignored his suggestion to find an adult. Sweating nervously, Saoirse wonders if she has done something to make him uncomfortable. Enoch clarifies that he is not upset about the hunting tournament credit. Saoirse dismisses the tournament entirely, prompting Enoch to ask what is truly bothering her. Saoirse hesitates before admitting she has a small favor to ask of him. Saoirse looks away shyly, explaining that something minor has been weighing heavily on her mind. Saoirse cheekily demands that Enoch promise to grant her favor before she reveals what it is. Enoch flatly refuses her unreasonable demand, prompting Saoirse to dramatically call off the request. Enoch looks deeply conflicted and sweating as he debates whether to give in to her. Saoirse beams with delight as Enoch reluctantly agrees to listen to her request. Saoirse commands Enoch to repeat after her, leaving him completely baffled. Saoirse grips Enoch's arm tightly, looking at him with desperate urgency. Circea begins to speak a strange title, prompting a confused reaction from Enoch. Circea urgently demands that Enoch address her as a detective. Enoch reacts with sheer bewilderment at her bizarre and sudden request. Sarisha frantically presses him to quickly agree and use the tayo. Hoping to uncover a connection to her past life, Circea waits as Enoch finally calls her detective. Circea stands silently in suspense after Enoch complies with her strange request. Circea sweat drops in disappointment when the experiment fails to yield any useful clues. Circea reasons to herself that Enoch is likely unrelated to her past enemy. Circea nervously laughs it off and tells Enoch to completely forget about her request. Enoch becomes highly agitated, protesting that he cannot simply forget her strange words. Enoch abruptly stops speaking mid-sentence, looking deeply conflicted. Circea is left deeply puzzled by Enoch's sudden silence. Enoch turns the tables, demanding a promise from Circea in return for his favor. Circea hesitantly asks for clarification as Enoch holds out his pinky finger. Enoch stands resolutely, awaiting her promise with his pinky outstretched. Enoch remains firm in his silent demand for a pinky promise. Circea wonders why Enoch is being so stubborn about making a promise. Circe's attention is suddenly diverted by loud noises coming from outside the room. Ignoring the distraction, Enoch loudly insists on locking in their promise. Circea relents and wraps her pinky around Enoch's to seal the deal. An awkward silence falls over the two children after making their promise. Circea feels relieved to see Enoch's tense demeanor finally soften. Staff members open the grand doors, announcing the arrival of important guests. Circea curiously asks who has arrived as the attendants hurry past them. The announcement of the Empress's arrival catches Circea completely off guard. Elegant footsteps echo through the corridor as the royal entourage approaches. The elegant Empress enters the hall, holding hands with the young second prince, Adore. Circea admires the Empress's beauty, asking Enoch about his family ties to royalty. Circea silently marvels at the striking family resemblance between the Empress and her uncle. Circea's uncle, Edward, suddenly rushes over to the children in a hurry. Edward nervously announces that he and Enoch must leave the party immediately due to an emergency. Circea and Enoch quickly agree to their sudden departure. Edward tries to brush off the children's concerns despite looking visibly unwell. Circea watches Edward closely, starting to notice something strange about his behavior. Sensing Edward's trembling fear, Circea bids him and Enoch to safe trip home. Circea waves goodbye as the Empress approaches them from the background. The Empress stops Edward, gently chiding him for trying to leave without greeting her. Circea is stunned to realize the Empress is addressing her uncle as a brother. The Empress puts on a hurt expression, questioning Edward's coldness toward her. Edward breaks into a cold sweat, looking terrified as the Empress draws near. Bowing deeply, Edward politely greets the Empress while keeping Enoch close by his side. Edward defiantly declares that he has cut ties with his family, refusing the Empress's sisterly affection. Enoch looks up at his father in shock, completely stunned by the cold declaration. The Empress's gaze softens with disappointment as Edward remains completely unyielding. Circea watches in dread as the atmosphere in the hall suddenly turns icy cold. Edward's eyes flash with intense anger as he silently refuses to accept her as family. Edward sharply raises his voice, demanding the Empress stop referring to them as family. Circea watches in shock as the Empress begs Edward to talk things out properly. Circea is bewildered by the Empress insisting on her sisterly status despite Edward's clear rejection. Edward visibly struggles, sweating as he begs to be allowed to leave and rest inside. Circea finds it incredibly creepy that the Empress continues to push sisterly affection onto Edward. Observing the Empress closely, Circea realizes her elegant appearance hides a deeply bizarre and unsettling personality. Circea frantically brainstorms a way to bypass imperial rules and help her uncle escape the situation. She desperately searches for a distraction to free her uncle from this unbearable tension. A sudden, brilliant idea strikes her like lightning, filling her with mischievous determination. Circea boldly decides that the best course of action is to cause a massive scene. Circea loudly exclaims that her uncle is about to collapse from a sudden severe fever. Circea slyly winks at Enoch, urging him to play along and help save his father. Enoch freezes in utter surprise, completely caught off guard by her sudden theatrical performance. Quickly catching on, Enoch desperately pleads with his father to return home before he collapses. The dramatic display successfully sways the surrounding crowd, who murmuringly agree he should go rest. Circea boldly confronts the Empress, demanding how she could ignore her own brother's obvious suffering. The Empress gasps in panic as Circea dramatically warns that Edward might stop breathing. Circea internally smirks, knowing a collapse here would cause a massive scandal for the royals. Thoroughly panicked by the threat of a public scandal, the Empress finally permits Edward to leave. The Empress claims she acted out of worry, but Circea remains highly skeptical of her excuses. Edward casts a dark, lingering look of sheer resentment back toward the elegant Empress. Edward politely bids them farewell, guiding Enoch away from the suffocating presence of the royal. Circia cheerfully waves goodbye as Edward and Enoch finally make their escape down the corridor. Circe breaks into a cold sweat, realizing too late that she should have left with them. Feeling the Empress's cold anger radiating, Circe swallows hard, realizing she is in deep trouble. Circe quickly steals her resolve, convincing herself that she merely did what was absolutely necessary. The Empress turns her sharp focus onto Circe, addressing her as the young emblem lady. The Empress flashes a radiant, perfectly poised smile that masks her simmering frustration. Circe cheekily retorts that truly caring for someone means knowing when they are suffering in silence. The Empress's smile falters, inwardly seething at the audacity of a mere child talking back. Circe stands her ground, internally warning the sovereign to leave her beloved uncle alone. Circe playfully reminds herself that surely an adult wouldn't hold a grudge against a child. Tense silence stretches as the Empress slowly coaxes her mouth back into a tight smile. The Empress dryly comments that Circe's bold attitude is indeed typical of the proud emblem family. Without another word, the Empress turns to leave, calling the young prince to follow her. The Empress reassuringly promises Prince Adore that they will have future opportunities to meet Edward. Circe politely bows, bidding the Imperial Royal entourage a safe return to the Bellows. Left behind, Circe anxiously ponders what the Empress meant by calling her behavior emblem-like. Returning to the banquet, Circe demands water while her companion curiously asks where she was. After explaining her brief encounter with the Empress, Circe questions if the royal dislikes her family. Man reveals a shocking secret, explaining that the Empress's past love proposed to Circe's mother. Circe violently spits out her drink in sheer shock upon learning the suitor was the Emperor. Wiping her mouth, Circe finally understands why the Empress harbors such a deep-seated hatred. Horrified, Circe realizes she has practically kicked a hornet's nest and earned a powerful enemy. Later that night, frantic voices echo through the grand estate, desperately calling out Circe's name. Circe's bedroom door flies open as her mother bursts inside, looking pale with panic. Rubbing her eyes, Circe is stunned when her mother demands to know what she told the Empress. Circe protests her innocence, but her mother frantically insists she shouldn't have spoken to her. Her mother desperately demands answers, gripping her shoulders while Circe struggles to explain her actions. Their tense conversation is interrupted as Circe's father rushes into the room to comfort his wife. Circe's father holds his weeping wife, whispering about a mysterious tragedy involving someone named Dana. Circe watches them in growing dread, silently wondering what dark fate befell her Aunt Dana. Circe's mother leaves, requesting some solitude, which her brown-haired husband reluctantly agrees to grant. Circe and her father look up as a sudden heavy thud echoes outside her bedroom. Circe asks her father about Aunt Dana, but he sweat drops and claims ignorance of the details. Circe anxiously asks her father if she did something wrong by confronting the Empress yesterday. Her father offers a gentle, silent smile, attempting to ease Circe's growing anxiety. Circe's father gently pulls her into a warm, comforting embrace to reassure her. Clinging to him, Circe softly calls out to her father in the quiet room. Circe quietly promises her father that she will do as he asks. Her father explains her mother's anxiety about Dame Dana, but a sudden noise interrupts him. Her father quickly rushes out to the balcony to investigate the source of the commotion. Flashback reveals Melcia clashing swords with her father, accusing him of abandoning Dana. The furious patriarch in a decorated blue uniform yells at Melcia for insulting her father. Circe anxiously asks her father what is happening as he prepares to head downstairs. Her father instructs Circe to stay inside while she questions the cause of the argument. Promising to investigate, her father coaxes Circe to remain in her room, and she agrees. Smiling anxiously, her father gently praises Circe before turning to leave her room. As her father departs, Circe watches him leave with a deep, instinctive sense of dread. The dark corridor remains silent as Circe wonders about the mysterious fate of Aunt Dana. Circe stands frozen in the dim hallway, her face pale with concern and uncertainty. Clenching her trembling fist, Circe worries about Aunt Dana and another person's dashed hopes. Circe recalls that Enoch was eagerly hoping to live with his mother after the tournament. Circe sits on her bed, suddenly realizing that Enoch must still be waiting. Circe wonders if Aunt Dana was severely injured during her long stay in Crichton. Shadows stretch across the empty hallway as Circe begins to fear the absolute worst. Circe anxiously wonders if Enoch has already heard the terrible news about his mother. Circe suddenly leaps out of her bed, driven by a sudden wave of panic. Circe desperately hopes that Enoch wouldn't be reckless enough to sneak off to Crichton. A young boy flinches in the shadows as he secretly prepares to slip away. Carrying a heavy backpack, young Enoch casts a solemn, determined look back into the dark. A soft, heavy thud echoes through the mansion as the door is quietly shut. Although her father hid the truth, the next day's newspaper announced Aunt Dana's disappearance. Circia gasps in shock as she reads the newspaper detailing the rising crisis in Crichton. Circia insists on knowing what is happening in her country despite her maid's concerns. Dismissing Circia's questions, the maid asks if she has eaten, but Circia declines. Surprised, Circia learns from her maid that her mother left for the palace. Circia laments being left completely alone while her entire family is at the palace. The maid reassures her, but Circia dramatically claims she wants to enjoy her loneliness. Circia clenches her fists with a sudden mischievous sparkle of determination in her eyes. Circia remembers her mother calling out her name Cecilia with a gentle, caring expression. When Circia asks to visit the Grey Mansion, the maid flatly rejects her request. Circia protests, but her maid warns that visiting the hostile Grey Mansion is dangerous. Circia cheekily whistles, pretending to agree while secretly hatching a brand new plan. Circia boldly demands to attend sword training, but the maid immediately shuts her down. A hand-drawn portrait of Enoch is pinned directly onto a straw sword training dummy. Dressed for training, Circia slashes at the dummy while quietly expressing pity for Enoch. Circia stops mid-swing and gazes intently at the dummy as a realization hits her. Circe tearfully realizes that the straw dummy has always been her most loyal companion. Circia happily embraces the dummy, calling it a friend, but accidentally snaps its base. The straw dummy collapses to the ground, leaving a completely stunned Circia standing speechless. Circia panics in despair, wondering why her only companion had to break right now. Circia collapses onto the floor in tears, wailing in worry for Enoch and the dangerous monsters. Circia's dramatic despair is suddenly interrupted by a firm, heavy footstep sounding close behind her. Circia quickly pauses her crying and looks up in complete confusion at her unexpected visitor. Circia's eyes widen as she recognizes her imposing red-bearded grandfather standing proudly before her. Her grandfather pulls her into a warm hug, gently offering sweet, comforting words to soothe her. Circia clings tightly to his elegant uniform, looking up at him with tear-filled yellow eyes. Her grandfather calmly reveals his shocking decision to step down from his ducal title over Dana's disappearance. Circia frantically protests his choice, demanding how he can casually abandon such an important royal title. The proud elder smiles warmly, declaring that only his sword and way of life define him. Circia looks up in silence as her grandfather places a gentle, reassuring hand on her head. Circia reflects deeply on her grandfather's words, realizing his profound dedication to his own path. Circia gently holds his sleeve, deeply moved by his resolute, honorable spirit and quiet determination. A bright, happy smile replaces Circia's tears as she looks up at her beloved grandfather. Her grandfather smiles back warmly, his face filled with deep affection and quiet relief. Her grandfather excitedly reveals he bought her a present from the palace, immediately sparking her curiosity. Adorning a beautiful new white lace bow in her red hair, Circia joyfully expresses her love. Her grandfather explains his necessary return to Crichton Forest, prompting Circia to anxiously beg him to stay. Circia listens quietly, her youthful face turning serious as she contemplates the dangerous mission ahead. Her grandfather quietly reassures her that Aunt Dana is actually safe, leaving Circia momentarily stunned. Circia extracts a firm promise from her grandfather to always return for her birthday celebrations. Her grandfather gently pats her head again, offering warm comfort as she cries emotional tears. A sudden, loud, stomach-growling sound interrupts the tender moment, confusing Circia's grandfather. Circia laughs sheepishly and admits to her grandfather that she has not eaten anything yet. Her grandfather instantly erupts in comically intense fury, demanding to know who dared starve Circia. Forgetting his ongoing Cold War, the grandfather fiercely scolds Circe's parents over her missed meal. Her panicked mother instantly forgets her own anger, desperately apologizing nonstop for the oversight. Circia happily enjoys her feast, mischievously considering skipping meals more often to unite her family. Circia reflects on her lonely past life, deeply touched by how much her new family cares. Circia gently pokes at her egg yolk with a fork, lost in deep, sentimental thoughts. Circia's mood grows somber as she anxiously wonders when she will see Enoch again. The maid politely bids Circia a good night's rest as she prepares to leave her bedroom. Circia turns around in surprise as her maid suddenly calls out to her one last time. The maid delivers the shocking news that young Enoch has run away from home yet again. Circia quickly blushes and angrily denies caring, prompting a playful knowing chuckle from her maid. Circia worries about young Enoch's safety, wondering where he could have gone during such a tense time. A sudden, alarming realization strikes Circia, her eyes widening in absolute shock at where he might be. Circia rushes out onto her balcony, throwing the double doors open to scan the dark grounds. Grasping the balcony railings, Circia gazes into the night, her expression turning incredibly serious and determined. A small, knowing smile plays on Circia's lips as she formulates a plan to find him. Circia sneaks up on Enoch as he reads a letter under a tree, startling the white-haired boy. Enoch gasps in surprise, calling out her name as Circia offers him a warm, friendly smile. Sitting beside him under the starry night sky, Circia curiously asks what letter he is reading. Enoch sighs and lies down on the soft grass, attempting to clear his troubled mind. When Circia gently offers him comfort, Enoch quietly declines, stating he simply wishes to rest. Lying beside him, Circia internally struggles to find the right words to comfort her quiet companion. Enoch sits up and explains that his father collapsed upon hearing news about his mother, shocking Circia. Enoch resolutely declares that crying won't solve anything and would only worry his family even more. Circia is deeply touched by his maturity, silently contemplating his heartbreaking yet noble perspective. Circia looks at him with deep empathy, realizing how much emotional burden the young boy is carrying. Staring up at the starry night, Enoch remains silent as Circia softly asks if he is truly okay. Enoch sadly reflects on his distant mother, quietly accepting that they will remain separated a bit longer. Circia looks down at Enoch with deep concern, softly calling out his name in the quiet forest. Circia quietly kneels beside Enoch as he lies on the grass under a soft beam of moonlight. Enoch gazes up at the sky in silence, his blue eyes filled with heavy, unvoiced sorrow. Enoch tries to dismiss Circia's worries by calling Aunt Denna mean, prompting Circia to demand if he understands how long he has waited for her. Circia passionately reminds Enoch of his intense training and early morning laps for the hunting tournament. Enoch's confusion over her specific training details is humorously dismissed by an exasperated Circia. With trembling hands, Enoch bitterly admits his mother should have returned to him regardless of the obstacles. Circia passionately exclaims that Aunt Dana should have returned because she is his mother. Circia is suddenly shaken as she recognizes a familiar, dark anger in Enoch that reminds her of someone from her past. She recalls her past life where an angry fist slammed onto a table during a tense interrogation. In her memory, a determined detective yelled at Yoon Do-yoon, offering her help to put his mother's killer in jail. The detective urged Yoon Do-yoon to join forces for revenge while he sat in weary, silent amusement. Yoon Do-yoon looked up with a cool smirk, questioning the detective's assumption that he wanted to avenge his mother. Yoon Do-yoon playfully mocked the detective's ignorance, shockingly revealing his mother had stolen money from her killer. He coldly questioned why he would ever avenge someone like his mother, leaving the detective completely stunned. The detective gasped in horror as Yoon Do-yoon chillingly declared his true goal was revenge against his mother. In the present, Circia gasps as she clenches her dress, deeply unsettled by the lingering memory. Circia chides herself for comparing Enoch to Yoon Do-yoon, promising never to repeat the mistake. Enoch's sudden declaration of wanting revenge on his mother catches Circia completely off guard. Enoch resolutely vows to become the Emperor's sword to make his mother regret her choices forever. Relieved, Circia sighs and finds his childish idea of revenge to be surprisingly harmless and cute. Enoch's sudden challenge to become stronger together catches Circia completely by surprise. An irritated chibi Circia fumes, declaring that Enoch is exactly the type of guy who makes girls want to punch him. Years later, Circia lies panting on the training ground floor after an exhausting sword match. Formal announcement echoes across the courtyard, declaring that the intense training match has been decided. Defeated once again, Circia lies on the ground with a look of bitter frustration. An older, elegantly tall Enoch looks down at her with a calm, composed expression. Circia Emblem, now 18, stubbornly raises her wooden sword and refuses to admit defeat. Enoch calmly extends his open hand to help his defeated companion up. Circia glares up in frustration, realizing Enoch has grown significantly taller and much stronger. Circia closes her eyes in annoyance at her rival's irritatingly superior progress. The scene shifts to a torchlit stone hallway echoing with the sharp sounds of training. A fierce clash of steel rings out as two blades collide in the training hall. Circia aggressively spars with a mysterious, mummy-wrapped opponent in the dark corridor. The two duelists stand facing each other, breathing heavily in the dim light. Circia smirks, teasing the Royal Direct Guard Knight about being full of openings before ending their session. The mysterious wrapped knight stands in silent contemplation, holding an elegant sword. A single desperate call for Aunt Dana echoes through the pitch-black darkness. The silent, mummy-wrapped knight stands under the torches, their true identity hidden. Circia lies defeated, bitterly lamenting how impossible it is to surpass a hardworking genius. Circia sighs on the ground, tired of facing the same defeat in every single spar. Enoch stands tall under the bright blue sky, looking down at her with calm, empty eyes. Circia leans on Enoch as he helps her walk, realizing she can no longer read his mind. Enoch stares ahead with a distant, unreadable expression as they leave the courtyard. Enoch asks Circia if she can walk home alone, and she quickly reassures him that she is fine. Circia looks back at him, wondering when the competitive gap between them became so wide. The two childhood friends walk away from each other in opposite directions across the training circle. Clutching her arm, Circia looks down in quiet self-pity, calling her own performance pathetic. Enoch pauses and glances back over his shoulder, watching Circia walk away. Saoirse looks up in surprise, completely caught off guard by a sudden question. Enoch stands calmly under falling leaves, firmly demanding a straight answer from her. Stunned by his directness, Saoirse stammers in absolute confusion over what he means. Enoch suddenly turns his back on his childhood friend and walks away. The two friends silently walk away from each other, leaving a heavy silence behind. Saoirse grabs her red hair in sheer frustration over her disappointing defeat. Grinning manically, Saoirse lets out a quiet remark as her anger begins to boil. Saoirse notes that it has been quite some time since she felt this incredibly furious. Panic screams echo across the courtyard as terrified knights desperately flee from Lady Saoirse. Saoirse furiously orders Zeke and Lucas to stop, but they cry out that she will beat them if they do. Saoirse fanatically suggests treating their spar like a real combat battle, leaving the knights screaming in terror. Saoirse loudly reassures them that she has no intention of killing them as she attacks. A desperate announcement echoes across the courtyard that no one is left to spar with her. Cersei's father walks down the elegant hallway while his butler follows closely behind him. The butler notes that Cersei's aggressive behavior always worsens after she spars with Lord Enoch. Cersei's father quietly contemplates as the butler worries about her increasingly frequent aggressive states. The father commands the butler to contact his wife immediately, receiving a quick, polite confirmation. A quiet, slow dripping sound echoes from the golden faucet in the empty washroom. Cersei stares into the mirror, shocked to find dark circles under her eyes from exhausting training. Exhausted and bandaged, Saoirse questions if she needs to find new sparring partners outside her home. Saoirse reflects on her month-long isolation, admitting she avoids going outside to escape people's gossip. She bitterly recalls how people always gossip about Enoch's predictable, continuous victories over her in every spar. Cersei sighs in self-pity, feeling incredibly frustrated that she hasn't made any progress while Enoch thrives. A sudden knock on the door interrupts her thoughts as a familiar voice calls her name. Saoirse quickly peeks out of her room, instantly recognizing her mother's warm, welcoming voice. Saoirse's mother stands gracefully in the glowing hallway, calling out her daughter's name with a bright smile. Saoirse leaps into her mother's loving embrace, happily welcoming her back home. Cersei asks how she found time away from the palace, and her mother sweet-talks her, saying she dropped everything just to see her. Cersei realizes that despite her past life age, standing before her mother always makes her feel like a carefree child. Cersei asks if her father contacted her, leaving her mother startled and wondering how she figured it out. Cersei emits a dark aura, muttering that it was totally obvious, which instantly unnerves her mother. Protesting her innocence, Cersei is playfully dragged away by her smiling mother. Cersei laughs and pleads with her mother to stop pushing her as they head to the couch. Sitting on the sofa, her mother gently questions why she has been tormenting the mansion's poor knights. Her mother advises against extreme sparring, but Cersei passionately argues that realistic combat is crucial to prepare for potential wars. Cersei insists it's the only way to get stronger, prompting a knowing, warm smile from her mother. Her mother gently points out that Cersei's harsh training stems from her deep desire to grow much stronger. Her mother astutely notes that Cersei is simply frustrated by her seemingly slow progress. Hit by the truth, Cersei drops her head in silence as a quiet sigh escapes her. Cersei sits dejectedly on the sofa as her mother gazes at her with deep sympathy. Cersei fears becoming the first emblem to lose to the Grey family, dreading that everyone will view her as pathetic. Her mother reaches out, gently holding her daughter's tense, bandaged hands to offer comfort. Her mother reminds her of how she once fell in love with the sword and asks how she feels now. Cersei looks up at her mother, her beautiful gold eyes welling with emotional tears. Cersei dramatically yells that her beloved sword betrayed her by favoring Enoch instead. Her mother is completely bewildered by Cersei's dramatic complaints about the painful love of swordsmanship. Cersei dramatically vows never to love again if it is always going to be this painful. Cersei huffs and pouts like a spoiled child, her anger dissolving into humorous tears. With a sweet smile, her mother asks if she is done venting, and Cersei sheepishly replies yes. Her mother asks if she can handle what's next, and Cersei enthusiastically agrees to any harsh training challenge. Her mother instructs Cersei to attend Olivia Boldmore's birthday party, leaving her completely shocked. Cersei is completely overwhelmed by the sudden news that her father will teach her how to dance. Cersei's mother promises that many eager guests will be waiting to see her at the venue. Cersei screams in utter despair when her mother coaxes her into promising to attend. Cersei remains frozen in panic as she processes the idea of dance lessons with her father. The vivid imagery of the social gathering lingers in Cersei's mind as she hesitates. Entering the vast golden ballroom, Cersei's father expresses great relief at finally utilizing the grand space. Cersei reluctantly follows her father as they walk across the vast, polished ballroom floor. Cersei stops in her tracks, wide-eyed with sudden apprehension as her father turns around. With a gentle smile, her handsome father gracefully extends his hand to invite her to dance. Noting her visibly sullen expression, her father points out that she does not look very enthusiastic. Circia explains her reluctance, admitting that social gatherings and formal banquets simply do not suit her. Circia feels deeply pierced when her father jokingly points out her current struggles with swordsmanship. While acknowledging his point, Circia questions if dancing is truly the solution she needs right now. Her father gently invokes her mother's wisdom, asking if her mother would ever mislead her. Circia begrudgingly concedes her mother's intentions, though she still harbors lingering doubts about the plan. Her father maintains a calm, knowing smile as Circia struggles to find a counterargument. Her father dramatically guilt-trips Circia, prompting her to immediately panic and agree to dance with him. Circia grumbles about her father's blatant manipulation, knowing she can never resist his emotional pleas. Circia complains as her father playfully pushes her forward, noting he behaves exactly like her mother. Her father fondly recalls that he was always her mother's favorite practice partner for dancing. As the elegant gramophone begins to play, Circia watches her father prepare for their dance. A sudden realization washes over Circe's face as the music begins to fill the room. Circia proudly declares her mother's strength, while her father challenges her to prove her own resilience. Determined to find a path forward, Circia vows to find a breakthrough during this training. Gritting her teeth, Circia passionately declares that she will work as hard as she can. Her father looks at her with immense pride and affection, pleased by her renewed determination. The scene shifts to the grand venue of Lady Olivia's birthday celebration on a bright day. The elegant ballroom is bustling with noble guests enjoying the lavish birthday party of Lady Olivia. Olivia anxiously bites her nails, desperately hoping her dearest friend Cerisha will arrive for their dance. Lady Olivia Boldmore, now 18, sits dejectedly as her attendant watches her with quiet concern. Lizzie Vanderwell approaches Olivia with a sweet-toned compliment, praising the beauty of her birthday party. Lizzie continues her flattering remarks, stating the event perfectly befits the prestigious Boldmore Marquis family. Lizzie subtly insults Olivia, questioning if she is old enough to act more independently now. Enraged by the passive-aggressive insult, Olivia mentally curses Lizzie Vanderwell for mocking her at her party. Lizzie mentions a circulating rumor, questioning whether Circia will actually make an appearance at all. Lizzie explicitly names Circia Emblem, sending a wave of panic and shock through Olivia. Lizzie insincerely apologizes for her rudeness, claiming her questions stem purely from high eagerness and expectations. As Lizzie walks away, Olivia furiously fumes over the rudeness and worries Circia might not arrive. Lizzie gossips with other guests, mocking Olivia's belief that Circia would attend such a small party. Lizzie sneers that ladies should ignore such delusions, leaving Olivia feeling deeply humiliated and hurt. Olivia angrily grips her dress, swearing vengeance against Lizzie for humiliating her out of petty jealousy. The ballroom suddenly erupts into excited gasps as Circia Emblem's grand entrance is formally announced. Lizzie and the gossiping nobles spin around in complete disbelief at the sudden announcement. Circia makes a stunning entrance, dressed in an exceptionally elegant masculine blue military-style uniform. Exuding confidence and charm, Circia offers a dazzling, warm smile to the astonished crowd. Olivia gasps her friend's name, completely spellbound by Circia's stunningly handsome appearance. The shocked guests whisper in disbelief, noting Circia rarely ever participates in any social activities. A young girl peeks from behind a curtain, eagerly pleading to catch a glimpse of Circia. A young girl accidentally trips and falls directly onto the floor right before Circe's feet. A young girl lets out a painful grunt as she crashes face first onto the polished ballroom floor. She peeks up in startled surprise, wide-eyed with awe at the handsome figure before her. The brown-haired girl stammers out her grateful thanks after Circia gently catches her from falling. With a warm, comforting gesture, Circia gently pats the blushing young girl's head. Circia flashes a dazzling, handsome smile that radiates absolute charm and elegance. Circia is completely oblivious to the fact that her dashing appearance has instantly caused widespread lovesickness among the surrounding noble ladies. Walking gracefully across the ballroom, Circia approaches Olivia, who sits on an ornate sofa. Circia smiles charmingly at her friend, offering a warm and welcoming greeting. Olivia looks up in stunned, blushing awe, completely captivated by Circia's incredibly handsome presentation. Olivia joyfully welcomes Circia, while another lady approaches to eagerly seek Circia's attention. Circia looks completely bewildered as Olivia throws a fierce, protective glare at the approaching noblewoman. Lizzie Vanderwell dramatically demands a dance from Circia to make up for her hurt feelings. Olivia fumes in silent outrage, completely shocked that Lizzie is boldly trying to steal Circia away for a hand kiss right in front of the guest of honor. Olivia desperately hopes Circia will refuse, silently pleading for her friend to ignore the bold request. Circia looks down at her friend, sensing the sudden tension filling the ballroom air. Circia smoothly extends her hand to Olivia, politely asking for the honor of kissing her hand instead. Circia cheeky winks at Olivia, offering her a playful, reassuring sign of solidarity. Olivia is utterly dumbfounded by the gesture, silently questioning Circea's sanity while Lizzie eagerly accepts the display. Circea bursts into hearty, bright laughter, fully enjoying the dramatic reactions of the crowd. The elegant fabric of Olivia's dress swirls beautifully amidst a backdrop of glowing, brilliant flowers. Circea and Olivia gracefully take to the floor, beginning a beautiful dance together. Soft, radiant yellow flowers bloom, emphasizing the warm and celebratory atmosphere of the party. As they spin, Circea notes that she clearly noticed Lizzie was trying to pick a fight with Olivia. Olivia admits her surprise at Circea's quick perception, prompting Circea to defend her ability to notice social cues. Olivia tests Circea with a poetic compliment about radiant hair, but Circea simply interprets it literally as a comment about pleasant weather. Circea is outraged when Olivia reveals the insult actually implies her head is empty, leaving Circea protesting the logic. Feeling completely out of her depth, Circea grumbles that high society is definitely not meant for her. Circea declares she is leaving after this dance, but Olivia playfully insists she must stay, prompting Circea to reveal she already has a next partner lined up. Circea casually names Lizzie Vanderwell as her next dance partner, leaving Olivia completely shocked and yelling in disbelief. Circea notices Lizzie's tearful expression in the distance, observing that she looks ready to cry from rejection. Circea explains to a skeptical Olivia that they were actually decent friends during their childhood years. Circea fondly recalls how Lizzie once shared tarts with Olivia when Olivia's stomach growled from hunger. Circea advises that since they will keep crossing paths, they should avoid making things awkward between them. Olivia reflects on the past, realizing Lizzie genuinely admired Circea once and was simply excited to see her again. Olivia beams with a bright, genuine smile, her heart thoroughly warmed by her friend's kindness. Circea looks back with a gentle, soft expression, pleased to have brought comfort to her friend. Circea spins Lizzie in a graceful dance, receiving high praise while humbly dismissing the compliment. After a long day of dancing, Circea slips away to a quiet corridor to find peace. Circea slumps to the floor in utter exhaustion, reflecting on how dancing with 32 people completely drained her mind of training. Other noble ladies whisper among themselves, eagerly watching the terrace and waiting for Circea's return. Circea panics, realizing everyone is pretending not to look while secretly waiting to ask her to dance again. Circea crumbles into dramatic, comical tears, desperately wishing she could just escape the party and go home. Circea's eyes widen in absolute shock as a sudden announcement heralds the arrival of Sir Enoch Grey. Circea hides behind the terrace window, listening to the excited whispers of noble guests gossiping about Enoch and his fiancée. Circea is utterly bewildered by Enoch's sudden appearance, wondering why he has arrived at Olivia's party. A memory of the elegant, silver-haired Enoch Grey standing beside Olivia flashes through Circea's mind. Feeling incredibly awkward, Circea desperately whispers to Olivia, begging her to tell Enoch that she is not there. Olivia mischievously betrays her, smiling brightly as she points directly to Circea's hiding spot while Enoch nods. Circea is consumed by silent, fiery rage, mentally screaming at Olivia for her blatant betrayal. Circea flinches in startled surprise as Enoch suddenly appears right behind her on the terrace floor. Circea demands to know what Enoch is doing there, grumbling that she is simply taking a break. Enoch looks down at her with a calm, neutral expression. Enoch stands tall as Circea looks up with an annoyed and grumpy expression. Enoch requests a dance to discuss something, but Circea frustrates at the unnecessary formality. Overhearing guests excitedly clearing the floor for them, Circea begins scheming a quick exit strategy. A sudden brilliant idea strikes Circea, hoping she can slip away and head home. Enoch offers to take the lady's role, instructing Circea to lead the dance instead. Circea looks completely baffled, questioning how Enoch could possibly know the lady's dance steps. Enoch stands confidently against a floral backdrop, holding a hand to his chest. Enoch questions Circea's annoyed expression, prompting her to internally complain about how insufferable he is. Circea and Enoch stand facing each other in the center of the bustling ballroom. They both realize their dance will likely land them on tomorrow's Society column cover. Circea sheepishly wonders if there is any way to stop the upcoming gossip. Enoch points out that the entire frozen crowd is watching them, making avoidance impossible. Circea reluctantly agrees, stepping closer as Enoch gently places his hand on her shoulder. Circea is suddenly flustered, realizing how much Enoch has grown taller and larger since childhood. Enoch clears his throat as the distance between them grows noticeably closer. Circea looks up in surprise as Enoch softly calls out her name. Circea blushes nervously, her golden eyes wide with shock at his sudden closeness. Enoch looks away slightly, admitting his previous words must have sounded terrible in retrospect. A warm, nostalgic smile spreads across Circea's face as she softly giggles. Enoch looks at her in mild confusion, questioning why she is laughing at him. Circea explains that his apology reminds her of his childhood habit of repeating mistakes. They continue their graceful dance, exchanging intense gazes under the ballroom lights. Bathed in a warm pink glow, Enoch and Saoirse hold each other close. Enoch questions Saoirse's claims about her ability to lead during a dance. Saoirse looks up in startled surprise, wondering what Enoch is planning next. Enoch cheekily reminds Saoirse of her boast about knowing the man's part well. Leaning in close, Enoch whispers something directly into Saoirse's ear. Saoirse reacts with sudden anger and disbelief, demanding clarification on his remark. Saoirse closes her eyes and huffs, clearly annoyed by Enoch's playful teasing. Enoch looks down at her with a calm, amused expression as they dance. Saoirse stares up at him with a bead of sweat, looking mildly irritated. Enoch smiles brightly, laughing as he notes how rarely she has smiled since growing up. Saoirse's expression softens as she looks down, a quiet moment of introspection passing over her. Saoirse suddenly stomps on Enoch's foot, declaring that her actions might fix his behavior. Saoirse is outraged when Enoch easily reads her movements and blocks her step. A loud, painful "ah" echoes as Saoirse successfully stomps on Enoch's foot, sparking their fury. A tense aura looms as their playful dance transforms into a mutual fight. They aggressively trade blows and stomps under the guise of an energetic dance. The surrounding guests watch in absolute bewilderment, commenting on the incredibly expressive dance. Saoirse delivers another aggressive stomp to Enoch's foot, prompting a loud, painful "ah." Saoirse repeatedly headbutts Enoch's chest as he desperately tries to hold her back. Saoirse lands a direct, powerful punch straight to Enoch's jaw in a flurry of motion. Enoch clutches his bruised jaw while Saoirse smugly raises her fists, ready for more. Enoch wipes his mouth and accepts her challenge, asking if they're truly doing this. Saoirse smugly beckons him to come at her, completely matching his hostile energy. Infuriated by her taunt, Enoch unleashes a massive wave of power that shatters nearby windows. A local newspaper features a front-page picture of their chaotic brawl at the party. Her father reads the paper with amusement, while a regretful Saoirse begs him for help. Fuming with rage, Saoirse blames Enoch for the dance debacle, while Benedict comments on her stubbornness. Benedict suggests Saoirse hold up her hands in punishment before her mother arrives. Benedict playfully suggests Saoirse hold a bucket instead of just raising her hands. Saoirse eagerly complies with the training punishment, running off to find a bucket. Saoirse proudly lifts a large wooden bucket overhead as Benedict looks on with approval. Saoirse's mother Melusia suddenly bursts through the door, loudly calling out for Saoirse. Startled, Saoirse braces for scolding, but Melusia eagerly asks if she won the fight. Utterly bewildered, Saoirse stares blankly in silence at her mother's bizarre reaction. Melusia excitedly presses for battle details, prompting Saoirse to sheepishly declare the fight a draw. Melusia warmly explains she sent her specifically to test her strength in battle. But Saoirse angrily yells at Benedict for making her hold the bucket unnecessarily. Benedict calmly suggests Melusia sit down so they can discuss the duel together. A warm voice asks for details about the duel St. Cirque. Mauritia leans in eagerly to ask Saoirse how the duel went. Saoirse realizes Melchi is referring to her chaotic brawl with Enoch. Mauritia happily agrees that the clash was definitely a chaotic brawl. Melusia playfully pinches Saoirse's cheek, reminding her to maintain proper high society refinement. Melusia notes they fought with raw physical strength instead of using their swords. Saoirse suddenly pauses as a quiet moment of deep realization washes over her. A warm light frames a memory of Saoirse holding hands with Enoch. Saoirse remembers landing a powerful, direct punch right to Enoch's jaw. Saoirse reflects on the intense exchange, realizing Enoch threw his punch at full swing. Clenching her fists, Saoirse realizes her attack barely fazed him during their battle. A quiet, determined smile spreads across Saoirse's face as the truth becomes clear. Saoirse beams with newfound confidence, realizing she has discovered the key to defeating him. Saoirse eagerly declares to Melusia that she finally understands how to win. Saoirse's golden eyes gleam as she realizes victory will not come from raw strength. Benedict and Melusia listen as Saoirse explains she must accept their differences to win. Saoirse silently apologizes to her sword for forcing it to copy Enoch's fighting style. Bolting upright, Saoirse demands to return to her training to test her new strategy. Benedict encourages her to go, mentioning he arranged for a special helper today. Saoirse insists other knights are too soft, preferring to train by herself instead. Benedict gives a cheeky wink, telling Saoirse to trust his arrangement. Saoirse looks completely skeptical, wondering what kind of knight could satisfy her. Saoirse bolts out the door, determined to see who her mysterious training partner is. Saoirse throws open the heavy wooden doors, stepping out into the bright training yard. A massive, muscular knight in a flowing red cape stands waiting in the yard. Saoirse freezes in sudden shock, instantly recognizing the broad silhouette before her. Saoirse's father, a heavily built man with red hair and beard, grins back. Under a starry sky, the scene shifts to the brightly lit Emblem estate. Heavy footstep echoes as a mysterious figure strides down the quiet corridor. Melrisha and Benedict enjoy tea together, wondering about Circea's training progress. Circea's father enters, laughing as he explains that Circea has completely collapsed from exhaustion. Melrisha senses his underlying gravity, asking if there is another reason for his visit. Benedict politely offers the patriarch a cup of warm tea to ease the tension. The red-haired patriarch holds his teacup, his expression turning deeply serious. He shares a highly classified secret that will soon shake the entire kingdom. He gravely reveals that the Crown Prince's merchant group was completely wiped out. He shocks them further by stating the attackers were not human at all. He explains that hundreds of monsters descended from the Lowe's mountain range. Circea's father continues his grim explanation, revealing that the Rhine Company was not the only merchant group destroyed by monsters. He sets down his teacup, noting that deploying capable knights is the only solution to ease the citizens' panic. Distressed, Melrisha implores her husband not to consider Circea for the mission, pointing out the abundance of other skilled knights. While Circea's father argues that she qualifies as an official emblem knight, Benedict protests that the mission is far too dangerous. Melrisha weeps, suggesting her daughter should start with simpler tasks, while Benedict attempts to comfort her. Melrisha looks up tearfully as her husband gently reminds her that nothing in life is easy, promising her there is no need to worry. Flexing his fist, the red-haired patriarch confidently vows to ensure Circea returns safely from her mission. The scene shifts to the magnificent and sprawling imperial palace gleaming under a bright, clear sky. Circea marvels at the palace's grandeur, prompting Enoch to tell her not to act like a country bumpkin. Circea reacts with mock dramatic flair, teasing Enoch about his close relationship with the crown prince. Enoch smugly asks if she is jealous, instantly provoking Circea's short-tempered rage. Circea aggressively grabs Enoch in a headlock, completely ignoring their elegant surroundings until they are interrupted. Shocked, Circea and Enoch quickly scramble apart, trying to regain their composure and dignity. The two young knights freeze, recognizing the dignified figure standing before them as the head butler. After they bow respectfully, the polite butler guides them inside, noting that the crown prince is waiting and the emperor will arrive shortly. As they walk, Circea nervously notes the butler's remarkably imposing and dignified presence. The head butler smiles warmly at them as they enter, his expression polite and welcoming. Circea looks on in sheer amazement as Enoch pushes open the doors to the grand reception room. Circea marvels at the stunning blue reception room, wondering aloud where the crown prince is located. Circea shriekingly reacts when she spots the crown prince miserably huddled in a dark, depressed corner of the room. The crown prince depressingly sighs about belonging in the corner, leaving Circea and Enoch thoroughly bewildered. Circea frantically turns to Enoch for answers, completely unaware of the tall blonde figure approaching them from behind. The emperor remarks on Circea's loud voice resembling her mother's, prompting both knights to bow in frantic respect. The emperor casually dismisses their formalities, instructing them to sit down so they can begin their discussion. As he gets comfortable on the sofa, the emperor immediately inquires about the crown prince. Circea flinches in surprise as a gentle hand suddenly taps her on the shoulder. She turns to find the crown prince standing elegantly, his depressed demeanor completely vanished. Circea violently shakes Enoch in pure frustration, demanding to know how the prince recovered so quickly. The emperor and the composed crown prince sit side by side, radiating royal dignity. Circea agrees politely, but internally questions why the crown prince's behavior changed so abruptly when his father entered. Observing the crown prince closely, Circea notices faint tear marks on his cheeks, confirming her suspicions. A quiet beat passes in the room, highlighted by the elegant floral arrangement by the window. The emperor initiates the serious discussion, asking if they have heard of the monster infestation. Circea and Enoch stand attentively, both confirming that they are aware of the threat. The emperor explains that the massive wave of monsters has triggered countless urgent defense requests across the empire. He suggests that two talented young knights from their respective orders should step forward in this crisis. Feeling a sudden wave of dread, Circea nervously asks the emperor to clarify his proposal. With a calculating smirk, the emperor commands them to subjugate the monsters at the Lowe's mountain range. He adds a crucial detail, stating they must also escort the leader of the subjugation mission. While Circea protests their severe lack of practical experience, Enoch cautiously asks who will lead the mission. The emperor declares this is the perfect opportunity to make the crown prince a celebrated national hero. The crown prince sits in heavy downcast silence, showing no excitement for his father's grand plan. Circea and Enoch are frozen in horror at the thought of sending the frail prince to such danger. Circea mentally screams in outrage, realizing the emperor is essentially sending his own son to his death. Underneath the table, the terrified crown prince tightly clutches his trousers, trembling with silent fear. The emperor relentlessly repeats his desire to mold his son into the hero the panicked citizens demand. A heavy, suffocating silence descends upon the room as the reality of the command sinks in. Circia and Enoch exchange tense, highly concerned glances, deeply worried for the young prince's life. Enoch bravely speaks up, warning the emperor that the scent of blood makes the mountain range incredibly dangerous. Sweat dropping in panic, Circia frantically tries to think of a way to express her unspoken, terrifying concerns. The blonde emperor challenges Circia and Enoch to prove their capabilities as official knights and future commanders. The emperor questions how much longer the crown prince must remain hidden away from the public. Looking side on, the blonde emperor declares that a cub must eventually grow into a true lion. He warns the young knights that remaining in safety will never make them excellent. Bright light shifts the scene as the tense audience draws to a swift close. The blonde emperor dismisses them, telling them to leave while his butler waits by the door. Circia and Enoch look completely shocked and break out into cold sweat at the sudden command. A sudden heavy thump sounds as the doors close behind the departing emperor. Circia angrily grumbles about the unfairness while Enoch sweatingly notes her sudden change in attitude. Enoch sits back down, resignedly stating they have no choice but to obey the imperial command. Enoch stands up and prompts Circia to leave, but she remains frozen in deep panic. Circia nervously points to the couch, where the terrified crown prince has curled up and begun sobbing. The two knights panic in chibi form, whispering about whether they should just excuse themselves. Circia awkwardly bows, nervously trying to announce their departure to the huddled, crying prince. As they walk away, Circia and Enoch suddenly freeze upon hearing another pathetic sob from behind them. Enoch turns his head in mild surprise, hearing the soft weeping continue in the quiet room. The fragile crown prince weeps miserably with his head buried and his arms on the sofa. He gasps in sheer shock as he is suddenly grabbed, his teary golden eyes wide with surprise. Circia lifts the crying crown prince up in a sudden, effortless princess carry. With a swift motion, she carries him over to sit on the edge of the table. Circia confidently stands before the startled prince, who asks in confusion what she is doing. Circia boldly compliments his handsome looks, causing the prince's face to flush red-hot in embarrassment. The prince frantically covers Circia's mouth, begging her to stop her overwhelming stream of compliments. Looking down dejectedly, the prince laments that he is completely unworthy after costing so many knights' lives. Circia looks at him gently, asking if he remembers their very first meeting during childhood. The prince looks up, recalling when their families participated in the imperial hunting tournament years ago. She brings up a book he loved, recalling how he once wished to become the emperor. The prince sadly admits his past dream, but confesses he feels entirely unqualified for the role. He clutches his head in despair, traumatized by the deaths of the knights who protected him. Quiet moment highlights his inner pressure of desperately wanting to live up to his father's expectations. Circia shares her own inadequacies, admitting she also falls short of matching the first legendary Duke emblem. The prince is taken aback, frantically arguing that Circia's hard work is already more than enough. His eyes dilate in sudden realization as Circia's words head home. A warm message of reassurance from him that he can also become a good enough emperor. The prince looks completely stunned and flustered, speechless at her comforting perspective. Circia dramatically points her finger at his chest to emphasize her belief in his potential. Circia smiles brightly, declaring she is eagerly looking forward to seeing him grow into a great monarch. The prince remains silent as a warm, nervous energy washes over him in the quiet room. He silently ponders if it is truly possible for him to become a good monarch. He doubts his own goals, but finds a spark of hope from Circia's encouraging words. Looking up with newfound resolve, the prince declares he wants to be a monarch worthy of her loyalty. Circia smiles warmly at him as he softly thanks her for her kindness. Circia politely excuses herself and turns to leave the prince alone with his thoughts. A gentle smile remains on her face as she confidently strides out of the reception room. The prince stares at the door, her final encouraging words about his monarch's eyes echoing in his mind. A soft thud sounds as the heavy wooden door swings shut behind the young knights. Circia walks down the grand corridor, stretching her arms and feeling incredibly relieved. She cheerfully asks Enoch what they should eat for dinner, but Enoch only responds with silent disbelief. Circia turns around in confusion, wondering why Enoch is staring at her so blankly. Circia reacts with loud shock as Enoch bluntly shares his bewildered thoughts on her wild behavior. Enoch looks aside with a sigh, expressing his wish that Circia would sometimes be less unpredictable. Circia complains that she is far too hungry to understand his complicated words. Enoch continues speaking, pointing out her unconscious ability to deeply move and sway others' hearts. Circia playfully defends herself, prompting Enoch's annoyed reaction as the atmosphere grows tense. Enoch clenches his fist tightly, inwardly frustrated that she has also unconsciously captured his own heart. A wave of deep annoyance washes over Enoch as he laments his helpless feelings. Circia looks on in complete bewilderment, softly calling Enoch's name in the quiet dusk. Circia calls out in surprise as Enoch suddenly turns on his heel and strides away. Circia furiously demands to know where he is going, completely losing her elegant composure. Circia quickly runs to catch up with Enoch, calling out to him once more. Enoch confesses his inner turmoil, leaving a startled Circia struggling to find her words. Confusion and distress fill Circe's mind as she wonders about Enoch's sudden shift. A sudden, furious scream echoes through the palace as decorative porcelain is violently shattered. The dark-haired empress rages about the crown prince's survival, demanding to know why he remains alive. Clenching her fists, the furious empress deeply regrets not finishing off the crown prince years ago. In a fit of sheer rage, the empress hurls a floral vase across the room. Terrified maids cower as the empress demandingly inquires about the whereabouts of her son, Adore. Bertan approaches with calm footsteps, reporting that her young son is currently resting in his chambers. Burton details how Adore collapsed from exhaustion, prompting a mocking, disbelieving outcry from the Empress. The Empress furiously questions how Andor can rest while his brother gains such an important position. The Empress demands answers, and Bertan respectfully bows, validating her intense anger and concerns. The Empress commands Burton to immediately drag her young son before her. Under a heavy blanket in a dark room, the young Adore trembles in absolute terror. Bertan knocks politely at Adore's door, requesting permission to enter the dark room. Warning that the Empress will come herself, Bertan is finally granted entry by the terrified boy. Bertan observes Adore's pale state while the weak boy quietly laments his failing health. They discuss the Empress's fury, and Adore accepts his grim fate, preparing to face his mother. Paralyzed by intense paranoia, Adore begs Bertan to block out the blinding sunlight in the corridors. Bertan gently reassures the weak prince, firmly dedicating himself to easing Adore's heavy burdens. Adore offers his heartfelt thanks to Bertan as they walk together toward his mother. The door creaks open as Andor enters the room, nervously calling out to his mother. The Empress runs to embrace Adore, weeping over the Emperor's cold treatment of her son. Hugging his weeping mother, Adore silently blames the Emperor for causing her so much pain. Adore gently pats her back, deeply blaming his own appearance for failing to meet expectations. Pulling back, the Empress reassures Adore that they still have a chance to change everything. The Empress outlines a desperate plan to interfere with the mountain mission to secure their survival. When Adore hesitates, his mother screams at him, questioning his strength and resolve against his brother. Paralyzed with fear under her intense gaze, Adore quickly surrenders and agrees to her demands. A cold, triumphant smirk slowly forms on the Empress's face as her son submits. Instantly, her terrifying rage vanishes, replaced by a warm and perfectly composed maternal facade. Standing silently in the background, Bertan observes the chilling maternal manipulation unfold. A subtle, knowing smirk plays upon Bertan's lips as the dark scheme is set in motion. The scene shifts to a gloomy, rain-swept graveyard under a heavy sky. Circia stands solemnly in the pouring rain, surrounded by her fellow knights in mourning. A simple wooden coffin decorated with white flowers is slowly lowered into the earth. Circia silently notes the suffocating weight of attending her very first funeral in this lifetime. Circia's mother steps forward to deliver a solemn eulogy for the two fallen emblem knights. She praises the fallen heroes for protecting the crown prince and preventing a devastating monster invasion. The quiet blonde crown prince stands amidst the crowd, listening to the heavy tribute to their sacrifice. Tears mixing with the rain, Circia's mother requests a final, solemn moment of silence. Circia silently regrets boasting so confidently before the crown prince, weighed down by the constant reality of death. Standing before the fresh grave and the heavy rain, Circia laments how surviving feels like an impossible miracle. Circia feels the wide gap between herself and Enoch, doubting her future ability to protect the prince. She observes the young prince, wishing to become a strong sword that can protect his future reign. Circia resolves never to let her weakness cause the fragile crown prince to weep in despair again. Under a clear, bright sky, a loud clanging sound echoes across the sunny training grounds. Whispering fills the courtyard as the gathered trainees watch a tense wooden sword duel unfold. The watching trainees are thrown into complete disbelief as they witness a shocking turn in the duel. The referee hesitates in surprise while a thoroughly exhausted Circia pants heavily from her defeat. The referee raises his red flag and loudly declares Lucas the winner of the duel. Dropped to the ground, a panting Circia stares in utter disbelief at her swift loss. Crowd's cheers ring out as Lucas is officially announced as the victor of the match. The trainees whisper in shock, debating if Circia's legendary swordsmanship has somehow grown weaker. A sudden step approaches Circia as a stern voice calls out her name on the dirt path. Circia's red-bearded grandfather stands tall, offering her a wooden sword with an imposing, powerful presence. Accepting the training sword, Circia obediently agrees to her grandfather's sudden demand to fight. The old warrior gazes down at Circe with a stern, intensely serious look in his purple eyes. Her grandfather steps forward, declaring his intention to personally test her skills in a duel. Circe admits her currently terrible form, but her grandfather firmly insists she needs his training. Her grandfather motivates her by reminding her of the strong rival she desperately wishes to defeat. The old warrior fixes her with an intense glare, challenging her resolve to win. Feeling the heat of his intense gaze, Circe remains silent but begins to sweat nervously. Circe eagerly accepts the challenge with a fierce, determined shout, her spirit fully reignited. Filled with newfound resolve, a fiery determination to win burns brightly in Circe's mind. She clashes swords with her grandfather, inwardly projecting her frustration onto her rival fiancé, Enoch. Circe silently curses Enoch, deeply irritated by his constant arrogant and gloomy genius attitude. With a fierce, angry battle cry, Circe swings her wooden sword with all her might. The scene shifts to the lush Lowe's mountain range where a white horse gallops toward a mission. Mounted on his horse, the crown prince addresses his knights, emphasizing that honor is not their priority. The prince firmly declares that their absolute goal is to complete the mission without any casualties. Feeling deeply reassured, Circe smiles as the prince instructs them to form pairs for the subjugation. The prince points to Circe and Zeke, assigning the two of them to pair up together. Circe cheerfully waves, giving a bright thumbs up to indicate her compliance with the pairing. Flustered by her enthusiastic response, the crown prince's face instantly flushes bright red in embarrassment. The prince hurriedly commands everyone to get into formation, leaving Circe wondering if she misread their closeness. Circe glances over, spotting a white-clad Enoch already heading off into the forest without her. Enoch glares back coldly with glowing blue eyes, deeply irritating Circe with his rude behavior. Sweating with annoyance, Circe grumpily notes to herself that some people truly never change. Zeke leans in close to ask if Enoch is indeed glaring directly at them. Circe dismisses Enoch's behavior as simple bad manners, while Zeke sweat drops in confused agreement. Circe cheerfully prompts Zeke to move out, and the brown-haired knight obediently follows her lead. Zeke ponders in deep confusion, wondering if having bad manners and being twisted are the same. Zeke scrambles to keep up as Circe loudly urges him to hurry up into the forest. A sharp blade slashes clean through a horned orange monster, spilling dark blood in a swift strike. Circe easily defeats the beast, prompting Zeke to celebrate their quick victory with her. Zeke optimistically hopes they will survive the mission, while Circe playfully agrees with his lighthearted outlook. A sudden, agonizing scream echoes through the forest, and Zeke panics upon realizing it is a human. Circe dashes toward the noise, ordering Zeke to follow as the terrified knight struggles to keep pace. The terrified voice of a helpless victim screams out in fear from somewhere deep within the forest. The desperate, panicked cries calling for Circe echo loudly through the dense, shadowed green trees. Circe abruptly halts her advance on the dirt forest path, sensing nearby danger. Zeke looks around in a panic, calling out to Circe before turning around in shock. Circe quickly silences the startled Zeke, quietly pointing out the presence of a gray knight nearby. Zeke is confused, but their attention is drawn to a screaming gray knight facing a massive monster. Zeke suggests leaving the rude knight behind, but Circe prepares to intervene as the giant spider prepares to strike. The terrified knight desperately yells at the monster as Circe launches a decisive rescue strike. The spider is struck down, leaving the trembling gray knight to look up in bewildered relief. The white-haired Enoch suddenly arrives, delivering a devastating aerial slash to finish off the beast. Enoch slashes down forcefully, splitting the giant orange spider beast. Enoch lands gracefully with his sword drawn, having completely neutralized the threat of the monster. The wounded knight relievedly calls out to Enoch, who looks back with a cold, blood-splattered gaze. Desperate gray knight profusely apologizes to Enoch, begging for forgiveness while clutching his cape. The wounded knight gasps in confusion as Enoch remains silent. Enoch furiously yells at Circe, questioning why she would recklessly throw her sword away during battle. Circe is utterly baffled, scratching her head in disbelief at Enoch's angry reaction to her rescue. Circe's thrown sword is lodged in the beast's head, highlighting her successful but controversial rescue attempt. Circe defends her actions, but Enoch coldly insists she should not have interfered in his duty. Enoch points out the danger she faced, while the rescued knight awkwardly tries to interject. While Circe fumes in the background, Enoch turns his attention back to the bowing gray knight. Circe is happy to have helped, but the gray knight's ungrateful comment immediately triggers her rage. Circe is held back by Zeke as the gray knight mutters secrets to Enoch. The gray knight whispers to Enoch, further irritating the eavesdropping Circe. Enoch decides they should move out to discuss details, and the gray knight leads the way. Enoch firmly demands that the ungrateful gray knight show proper gratitude to Circe first. Enoch repeats his demand in a chillingly stern tone, leaving no room for argument. Enoch harshly insults the knight's awareness, reminding him that Saoirse's quick action saved his life. Under Enoch's terrifying threat, the trembling knight quickly yields and prepares to apologize to Saoirse. The Grey Knight bows deeply to thank Saoirse, who accepts it awkwardly. Enoch plans to escort the wounded knight to the infirmary before regrouping with Saoirse at the midpoint. Saoirse walks away, feeling deeply unsatisfied by the forced and insincere nature of the knight's apology. Walking through the misty woods, Zeke voices his deep anxiety about survival. Saoirse delivers a creepy, ominous warning about survival rules, leaving Zeke absolutely terrified. Saoirse's playful remarks do nothing to ease Zeke's intense fear. Sir Osric and Lucas approach, calling out to Saoirse in deep concern. Saoirse asks why they abandon their positions and they lead her to investigate. A map illustration shows how the joint forces' planned pincer formation failed. The group of Emblem Knights gathers, expressing relief at Saoirse's arrival. Saoirse realizes with concern that only Emblem Knights are present in this sector. A chibi map depicts the Grey Knights being ambushed and wiped out by monsters. Saoirse discusses the worrying possibility of the Grey Knight Order being defeated. Saoirse contemplates the situation, wondering if the Grey Knights abandon them. Saoirse dismisses that idea, knowing the Grey Knights wouldn't defy Imperial orders. The Knights debate whether to retreat or advance, weighing the extreme risks of both. Saoirse sweats, realizing that advancing alone could lead to their complete annihilation. Saoirse considers seeking her mother's advice, but worries about leaving her unit. Saoirse trusts that Enoch wouldn't abandon them, though his silence is concerning. Saoirse suspects Enoch is dealing with an unspoken, highly critical situation. Sir Osric suggests searching for the missing Grey Knights before making a decision. Saoirse commands them to search the routes and regroup with any survivors. Saoirse remains resolute as they worry about being blamed for delaying the mission. The blonde Emblem Knight nods respectfully, acknowledging Lady Saoirse's command with determination. Saoirse gives her squad of Emblem Knights their final orders, highlighting the risks of their decision. The Knights sprint forward in unison, resolute in their shared goal to survive this dangerous mission. Enoch's squad is halted as a frantic black-haired knight reports a shocking, disastrous setback. Enoch surveys the camp of wounded veteran knights, deeply troubled by the scale of their casualties. Enoch absorbs the grim news, realizing the situation is far worse than initially anticipated. Observing a distant flare, Enoch suspects an unseen enemy is specifically targeting the Grey Knights. Enoch suspects foul play, troubled by the convenient placement of rookie knights on the front line. Seeing the suffering soldiers, Enoch concludes an external force is actively sabotaging the subjugation mission. Enoch's mind drifts back to a memory of a white-haired woman smiling gently. Saoirse's bright, confident smile flashes through Enoch's thoughts as he gathers his resolve. Enoch instructs his remaining ally to wait at the camp while he departs to investigate the vanguard. While rushing through the forest, Enoch suddenly senses a presence and whips around in shock. With a sudden swift leap, Enoch launches an aerial strike against a mysterious bandaged intruder. The mysterious intruder stands silently shrouded in the dark woods, remaining completely expressionless. A loud clang echoes through the forest as Enoch's blade fiercely collides with the intruder's sword. Gritting his teeth, Enoch intensely demands that the silent stranger reveal their identity. The chaotic battle pauses briefly as the dark secrets of the forest continue to unfold. Staring closely, Enoch wonders if the strange figure before him is actually a beast. Recognizing the opponent's light footwork as human, Enoch pursues them deeper into the woods. The silent, bandaged warrior watches Enoch's movements closely, anticipating his next move. A bright flash of light erupts as their blades clash once more in a fierce contest of strength. Enoch exerts all his force, gritting his teeth as he tries to overpower his opponent's guard. A sharp ring sounds as the skilled intruder cleanly parries Enoch's heavy slash. Enoch is forced back, realizing this incredibly talented foe might be behind the wounded veteran knights. Enoch points his sword at the intruder, demanding to know how they entered without Imperial orders. The bandaged intruder remains completely silent, offering no response to Enoch's stern interrogation. Enoch notes the lack of killing intent, wondering why the mysterious person was following him. With a firm grip on his decorated hilt, Enoch decides he cannot let the suspect escape. Enoch is suddenly distracted as he senses multiple people rapidly approaching their location. Enoch is startled by a loud, angry shout echoing from the bushes nearby. A smile creeps onto Enoch's face as Saoirse loudly chases down a cowardly knight. Saoirse's furious shouts draw closer as she relentlessly pursues the fleeing Grey Knight. With a sudden tackle, Saoirse successfully captures the fleeing knight, pinning him to the ground. Saoirse holds the struggling knight in a firm lock while Enoch watches in absolute disbelief. Staring at the chaotic scene, Enoch's cheeks flush slightly as he processes Saoirse's sudden arrival. Saoirse demands an explanation, and Enoch points toward the highly suspicious bandaged figure standing nearby. Spotting the strange, fully masked intruder, Saoirse recoils in dramatic, comedic shock. Saoirse suggests they team up, confident that they can easily capture the suspicious stranger together. Circia proudly boasts that she could probably handle this mysterious opponent all by herself. Unsheathing her ornate sword, Circia confidently declares she is much stronger than before. Enoch stares blankly, completely baffled by Circia's sudden display of unearned confidence. Enoch's wide blue eyes show his deep confusion as he tries to understand her dramatic declaration. Back at the training grounds, the spectating trainees gasp in sheer shock at a sudden turn of events. A sharp crack sounds as a broken piece of a wooden training swat clatters onto the dirt. Circia pants heavily in victory while her grandfather looks down in shock at his broken sword. Circia stands tall, gasping for breath as her training sword begins to glow with a brilliant aura. The onlookers point in absolute disbelief, shouting as they recognize the legendary sword aura surrounding Circia's blade. Circia beams with joy, thanking her grandfather as he proudly puts a hand on her shoulder. Enoch gazes in awe at the memory of Circia wielding her magnificent glowing sword aura. Enoch smiles softly, recalling Circia's sudden declaration of power. Circia proudly boasts about her swordplay before admitting she put her weapon down. A sudden cry of regret sounds as Circia dashes off, leaving Enoch completely startled. Circia grits her teeth, determined to prove herself during training. Young Enoch chases after Circia with a highly concerned expression on his face. Circia hoped to remain interesting, the training ground standing silent under a cloudy sky. Standing amidst blooming lilies, Enoch gently teases Circia for her late arrival at their meeting. Enoch reminds Circia that his weapon wasn't simply left behind in safe storage. Enoch anxiously questions whether Circia still lacks her weapon in this chibi-style exchange. Enoch proudly brandishes his brilliant glowing blue sword, announcing his successful weapon creation. Circia smiles proudly as she watches Enoch successfully summon his glowing blue blade. Ready for battle, Circia and Enoch raise their glowing weapons, shouting in mutual determination. The mysterious bandaged intruder stands silently as the battle cry to charge echoes. A quick rustling sounds as the masked figure suddenly leaps forward into action. A soldier runs quickly toward a grand glowing tent in the middle of camp. Inside the command tent, Prince Aurelian and Commander Emblem review the failing battle strategy. A messenger delivers grim news to Aurelian, asking if they should order Emblem to advance. Aurelian expresses deep shock and worry, declaring that such an advance would be far too dangerous. Aurelian decides to temporarily halt the subjugation, shocking his subordinate, who hesitatingly questions the order. Aurelian tells his men to rest until tomorrow, and they reluctantly obey his command. The soldiers quietly gossip, questioning the sudden halt and doubting Aurelian's preparedness for the battlefield. The soldiers gasp in shock as the Empress suddenly arrives, demanding to know the truth. The nervous soldiers stammer, completely terrified to answer the Empress's sharp questioning directly. The Empress's voice booms as she confronts Aurelian, demanding to know if the rumors are true. Aurelian and Commander Emblem turn in surprise as the Empress and Andor enter the temp. The Empress coldly accuses Aurelian of ruining the Emperor's plans, reiterating her demand for an answer. Aurelian bows deeply, politely asking how the Empress managed to travel all this way to the camp. The Empress claims she came to support her son Ador in fulfilling his duty to the people. Ador awkwardly agrees with his mother, who pressures Aurelian to share his command with his half-brother. Aurelian firmly suggests waiting to make decisions until they confirm why the Grey Knights have been delayed. The Empress dismisses the delay, but Aurelian warns that proceeding without the Grey Knights is too dangerous. The Empress manipulatively argues that knights must be prepared to make sacrifices for the eager citizens. Aurelian is utterly horrified, inwardly questioning if the Empress is actively ordering them to their deaths. Torn by duty, Aurelian desperately weighs the risk of massive casualties against his loyalty to the people. A sudden reassuring touch on his shoulder reminds Aurelian that wasting lives is not true leadership. Commander Emblem boldly declares that a real ruler devises strategies to minimize sacrifice, inspiring the worried prince. Commander Emblem defends Aurelian's strategy, leaving the scheming Empress visibly stunned and furious. The Empress snarls with a menacing glare, accusing Commander Emblem of being reluctant to enter the battle. The Empress maliciously suggests that Emblem lacks trust in the Grey rookies currently on the front line. Commander Emblem acts surprised, questioning how the Empress has such specific knowledge of the frontline rookies. Commander Emblem inwardly notes the Empress's suspicious inside knowledge, realizing she is plotting something sinister. The Empress quickly backtracks, claiming it was a guess before ordering Ador and the Crown Prince to split forces. Emblem asserts that the decision belongs to Aurelian, but is interrupted by familiar loud chow nearby. Circia humorously charges into the area, carrying a struggling and embarrassed Grey Knight over her shoulders. The Empress recoils in utter shock and anger at the sudden disruptive arrival of Circia. Emblem rushes outside to demand answers from Circia regarding the rear unit and the injured Grey Knights. Circia greets Aurelian politely, who urgently asks if the Grey Knights were indeed ambushed by monsters. Noticing the Empress's hostile presence, Circia decides to hold back details about the mysterious intruder for later. Saoirse explains they are still confirming details, while Aurelian mutters in surprise about the unexpected ambush. Cersei wonders if the knights failed to notice the monsters because they were too busy fighting amongst themselves. Quiet footsteps echo as a dark-clothed figure walks past a silent observer in the night. Cersei inwardly questions the Empress's hidden motives, while the Empress addresses a wounded Grey Knight. The Empress asks if Cersei beat up the injured knight, who reluctantly confirms her involvement. Cersei furiously yells that she only struck the knight because he stubbornly refused medical attention. Cersei and the injured knight continue to bicker as the Empress watches with a smug smile. The knight complains about Cersei's rough treatment, prompting her to snap back with a sharp insult. Aurelian nervously suggests intervening, but Commander Emblem notes that the fight strangely brought them closer. Aurelian is left completely bewildered by Commander Emblem's positive perspective on the physical clash. The Empress uses the conflict to demand that the two clashing knight orders be commanded separately. The Empress presents her trembling son Ador, who hesitantly promises to do his best if ordered. Aurelian looks at the terrified boy, recalling how frightened he himself was when first receiving command. Aurelian decides to reorganize forces and resume the subjugation tomorrow, exempting any injured soldiers. Aurelian announces that Ador will take command, leaving Cersei staring after him in silent shock. The Empress pressures Ador to use this command as an opportunity to earn the Emperor's approval. Pacing slows as Aurelian quietly retreats into his dark private quarters to process his decisions. Cersei and Commander Emblem enter the tent, requesting a private audience with the Crown Prince. Aurelian expresses shame over his perceived incompetence, but Cersei and Emblem suggest finding a quieter place. Commander Emblem asks to deliver her report first, and the Crown Prince gives her his permission. Emblem reports that ground erosion is progressing in the mountain range and suspects a high-rank monster. Cersei watches her mother, Commander Emblem, wondering what she is searching for in her armor. Cersei is startled when her mother suddenly pulls out parchment and a fountain pen for her. Cersei eagerly realizes she can write down her secret findings to inform the prince in silence. Emblem politely invites the Crown Prince to take a seat, while Cersei happily prepares her report. While Emblem discusses the long process of cleansing the land's energy, Cersei writes her secret report. Cersei finishes writing, looking up with a serious expression as she prepares to pass the message. Cersei hands her written report to the Crown Prince, who reviews it alongside Commander Emblem. Cersei's note reveals she encountered Enoch fighting a highly suspicious figure completely wrapped in black cloth. Aurelian is shocked to read that this cloaked figure is behind the ambush and Enoch is pursuing them. Commander Emblem's eyes widen in terror as she suspects the black cloth figure is a shadow named Dana. Deep within a dark stone corridor, bright torches burn fiercely, casting long shadows across the walls. The mysterious cloaked figure quietly walks along the stone path, opening a heavy wooden door. A long-haired blonde man calmly sips tea, noting the cloaked figure's silent return to the sanctuary. The blonde man inquires about the Grey Knight's monster ambush as the cloaked figure kneels before him. A glowing blue aura suddenly envelops the cloaked figure as a hand is held above their head. The blonde man gently addresses the weeping silver-haired woman who has returned from seeing her son. The blonde man coldly asks the weeping woman if she regrets her decision to become a shadow. Crying bitterly, the woman confesses her deep regret and wishes she had died as a corpse instead. The blonde man dismisses her regrets, coldly reminding her that returning to her past changes nothing. Deep in the quiet forest, several distinct footprints are left behind on a damp dirt pathway. Investigating restricted territory, Dana notices a woman's footprints heading straight toward a dangerous passage of monsters. Sensing immediate danger, Dana decides she must investigate the mysterious tracks deeper into the restricted zone. Standing amidst the towering trees, Dana hesitates, wondering if she should turn back before it gets too dangerous. Dana stops in surprise as she spots a dark cloaked woman standing before a gloomy cavern. Dana shouts a warning to the stranger, offering to escort her safely back to human territory. The stranger turns around, revealing herself to be the Empress, who glares back with a furious expression. Dana recoils in absolute shock and disbelief upon recognizing that the trespasser is the Empress herself. Caught red-handed, the Empress quickly prepares a spell, cursing Dana's presence in the dangerous forbidden territory. The furious Empress unleashes dark, monstrous shadows, commanding them to eliminate Dana and silence her forever. Terrified for her life, Dana desperately resolves that she cannot allow herself to die in this place. Dana flees in sheer terror as monstrous shadows pursue her, her thoughts clinging desperately to her child's victory. The silver-haired woman in armor flees in terror as monstrous shadows pursue her through the dark forest. Realizing the Empress wants her dead, she desperately contemplates whether she should fight or flee and endanger Enoch. Stealing her resolve, the silver-haired woman draws her ornate sword to face the oncoming dark threat. She raises her blade, firmly determined to stand her ground and fight the monstrous shadows. Facing an army of glowing-eyed shadow monsters, she bravely charges forward, shouting her intent to fight. Driven by sheer survival, her desperate vow to win and return alive echoes through the darkness. A sudden violent splash of blood cuts through the dark, signaling a brutal and tragic end to the clash. A mysterious narrator notes that she would have died if Sheffield Emblem had not searched for her. She lies brutally defeated and bloodied on the cold ground, her shattered sword resting beside her. The voice continues, explaining that her survival was a miracle since her internal organs were completely ruined beyond healing. The long-haired blonde man reveals that the Duke, whom she once considered an enemy, ultimately saved her life. He explains that magical Shadow's cloth restored her, and despite her painful oath separating her from Enoch, she protected him. Tears stream down the silver-haired woman's face as she is reminded of her duty to protect the Empire. Inside the quiet tent, Prince Aurelian and Circia burn a secret message to keep their conversation confidential. Circia and the red-haired knight listen carefully as Prince Aurelian explains the existence of the Emperor's secret shadow. Aurelian explains that these shadows protect the Emperor, sighing with relief as he realizes his father sent them for protection. Circia politely hands over the document, expressing her sincere gratitude to the red-haired knight, Sir Melrisha. Sir Melrisha holds a finger to his lips, silently indicating that this matter must remain strictly confidential. Left with her thoughts, Circia crosses her arms, deeply contemplating the secret existence of the Emperor's Shadow Knights. While walking outside, Circia wonders why a secret shadow would reveal themselves to Enoch just as Enoch calls her name. When Circia mentions that the suspicious figure got away, Enoch gently reassures her that she did not need to give chase. Circia questions his reasoning, prompting Enoch to hold her cheek and tell her to step closer for a quiet explanation. Leaning in close to whisper in her ear, Enoch explains that the cloaked figure was a knight sent by the Emperor. Circia realizes that the Shadow Knight's lack of killing intent during their fight now makes perfect sense. As they walk together, Enoch points out that their fighting was out of sync because they have only ever fought each other. Circia is startled when Enoch warmly proposes that they learn how to fight together as a coordinated team. Circia clarifies if he means training together, and Enoch firmly agrees that they should practice as partners. In a comical moment, Sosha questions how they can share a training yard without their rival knight orders clashing. Enoch scratches his ear, suggesting they put off finding a solution until after the current subjugation mission is over. Circia pouts cutely, telling Enoch to be grateful she did not insult his knight order more harshly. The narrator notes the historic, fierce rivalry between the Emblem and Grey families, who constantly fight like cats and dogs. Tabling their training plans for now, Circia and Enoch agree to talk again once the subjugation is complete. Circia looks back as the quiet, unresolved questions about finding a mutual training ground linger in her mind. Sisha reflects on her admiration for her mother and aunt, wondering if their rival families will ever truly get along. Enoch walks away under the starry night, his thoughts focused on moving past old pride and honor to find unity. Circia watches him retreat into the darkness, acknowledging to herself that achieving such harmony will be incredibly difficult. Suddenly stopping in his tracks, Enoch pauses under the night sky as a quiet breeze shifts the quiet atmosphere. A gentle rustle of leaves whispers through the branches, echoing the silent, shifting emotions between the two young knights. Enoch gazes into the distance with a serious expression, surrounded by a soft aura of light and white roses. The scene shifts abruptly to the majestic, sunlit spires of the Grand Palace on a bright, clear day. A sudden loud shout echoes through the palace as a brown-haired man slams the double doors open in excitement. The soft sigh, Circia closes her heavy book as a noisy intrusion disrupts her peaceful reading time. Sitting elegantly in her chair, Circia chides Zeke for his loud entrance and asks what has caused such a commotion. Zeke excitedly waves a sealed letter, while Circia wonders why he is making such a big deal out of a simple invitation. Dancing with joy, Zeke insists this invitation is special, prompting a sweat-dropped Circia to ask what it is. Zeke proudly presents the envelope, revealing it is from the academy where Lord Enoch Grey has enrolled. Circia listens silently as Zeke notes her busy schedule as interim commander ever since the Lowe's mountain range subjugation. Zeke teases Circia, recalling how she constantly checked the mailbox for a letter from the absent Enoch. Circia blushes deeply, surrounded by roses as she dramatically laments not receiving a reply to her previous letters. Realizing he misread her reaction, Zeke's sweat drops as Circia gives him a silent, completely deadpan glare. Circia smiles with anticipation, whispering that the moment she has waited for is finally here. Zeke stares in absolute disbelief, stuttering and asking to hear the incredible news once more. Circia triumphantly punches the air, ecstatically shouting that her beloved friend is finally graduating. Zeke claps his hands enthusiastically with a sweat drop, joining in on her joyous celebration. Zeke looks completely bewildered as floating question marks surround his puzzled, sweat-dropped face. The title screen of the story is dramatically displayed in red calligraphic font. Cain runs frantically after Enoch, calling out to his senior and pleading with him to wait. Cain desperately grabs Enoch's shoulder, pleading with his senior to hear him out. Cain demands to know why he is not allowed to join the Grey Knight Order. Cain wonders with frustration if his commoner status is the reason for his rejection. Cain argues that the rejection makes him look unnoble, but Enoch calmly replies that he does not handle recruitment. Cain passionately asserts that only his commoner status holds him back, since they share the top academic rank. Enoch questions why Cain wants to join the highly aristocratic Grey Order despite his hatred for nobles. Cain flinches and sweat drops, visibly taken aback by Enoch's sharp but accurate questioning. Cain admits that a commoner joining the prestigious order would feel like the perfect payback. Cain points out that his admired senior is already a member of that very order. Enoch is surprised to learn that he himself is the main reason for Cain's determination. Cain explains that Enoch's swordplay was different from the delicate style of other greenhouse-raised nobles. The flashback shows Enoch training with intense dedication, his sharp focus setting him apart from others. Sharp clashing sound rings out as Enoch fiercely fights, leaving Cain completely mesmerized. Cain recalls there was something truly captivating about the way Enoch handled his weapon. Cain confesses that seeing Enoch's swordplay made his deep-seated hatred for nobles feel entirely meaningless. Cain declares his ultimate goal is to stand by Enoch's side and master his style of swordplay. Enoch looks at Cain's determined expression, realizing those eyes seem incredibly familiar to him. Enoch connects Cain's fierce gaze to Circia, whose golden eyes share the exact same intensity. Enoch gasps in sudden realization as Cain watches him with a highly puzzled expression. Cain bows deeply to his senior, showing his sincere respect and earnest plea. Enoch walks away in deep thought, leaving the bowing commoner behind on the pass. A gentle, knowing smile spreads across Enoch's face as he continues on his way. Circia energetically opens the door, announcing her departure to her parents in the tea room. Circia's parents sit elegantly in their beautifully decorated parlor, enjoying a quiet moment together. Circia proudly explains that she has been appointed as an evaluator for the graduation exam. Benedict proudly notes how much their daughter has thrived since taking over as Emblem's commander. Circia hilariously corrects her mother about her interim title, while her mother casually dismisses the details. Circia dramatically laments her overwhelming duties, complaining that even 3 bodies wouldn't be enough. Benedict suggests hiring a deputy, earning an enthusiastic thumbs up from his grateful daughter. Circia excitedly praises her chosen candidate, Cain, who shared the top rank with Enoch. Benedict warmly bids his daughter farewell, wishing her a safe trip as she heads out. Circia's parents remain in the parlor as the door quietly closes behind their daughter. Circia's mother calls out Benedict for his dishonesty, knowing he already knew about Cain. She reveals that Benedict secretly intervened to ensure the Grey recruitment officer failed Cain instead. Benedict sweat drops and chuckles, confessing that being a good father to Cain is incredibly hard. The mother muses that Cain will likely grow fond of Enoch if they train together. Circia runs excitedly through the gardens, hoping Cain will agree to join her Night Order. Circia's parents hope Cain becomes a reliable partner who can grow alongside their daughter. The scene shifts to the bustling docks of the majestic coastal kingdom of Pavan. A traveler steps off the ship's gangplank, letting out an amazed gasp at the sights. Circia marvels at the massive scale of the kingdom's bustling and vibrant commercial port. Circia looks around the lively city streets in utter amazement, taken in the vibrant atmosphere. Circia is glad she arrived early, allowing her to explore the bustling market in peace. Circia strolls through the market, wishing she could just goof off, when a child suddenly spots her uniform and points her out. Circia is shocked as a crowd gathers around her, excitedly recognizing her as the commander of the famous Emblem Knight Order. Circia laments that her family's high popularity never allows her to slack off in public. As a merchant invites her for a meal, a blonde-haired woman spots Circia from behind. Circia turns in surprise as the blonde-haired woman loudly calls out her name from the crowd. Olivia Boldmore, Circia Senior from the Academy, waves energetically to draw her attention. Circia smiles brightly, relieved to see her friend Olivia in the middle of the crowd. Olivia quickly pulls Circia away from the crowd, successfully rescuing her from the overwhelming attention. Traveling together in a carriage, Olivia welcomes Circia to Pavan while Circia compliments her uniform. Olivia recalls her academy days, admitting everything was great except for trying to talk to Enoch Grey. Circia is surprised, asking if talking to Enoch is still as difficult as before. Olivia explains that Enoch is notoriously cold and barely talks to anyone other than Circia. Circia is momentarily taken aback by the revelation of Enoch's exclusive work toward her. Circia wonders if she holds a special place in Enoch's heart. Olivia confirms Enoch's coldness to others, while a blushing Circia jokingly complains about his stuck-up behavior. Olivia humorously suggests that Enoch needs a good smackdown, causing Circia to sweat drop. Saoirse blushes with embarrassment, thinking of how her friend is teasing her. A sliding door opens, transitioning to a memory of Saoirse's past life. In her previous life, she enters a study room and notices the same boy already sitting there. She asks the boy how he always gets the same seat, but he flatly refuses to share a secret. She playfully accuses him of having a trick up his sleeve, which he calmly admits. She ponders his secretive nature as she watches him from across the desk. She recalls that the highly coveted study seat always somehow belonged to that round-headed boy. The repetitive clicking of a pen echoes through the quiet study room. She wonders if the boy ever goes home, since he seems to be there at all hours. He explains his exhausting routine of arriving early and leaving late to avoid his mother, mirroring her own dark school days. She realizes in hindsight that this quiet boy was her only true friend during those exhausting school days. She wonders if the boy also considered her a friend despite their brief and quiet interactions. The soft, reflective sky highlights her lingering questions about her past life. Saoirse snaps back to the present, wondering whatever became of that boy from her past. Olivia announces their arrival, interrupting Saoirse's deep thoughts about her past. The carriage comes to a gentle halt outside the Grand Academy gates. Saoirse steps out and gasps in awe at the massive scale of the prestigious Continent Academy. Olivia kindly offers to take Saoirse's luggage to the dormitory for her. Olivia points out the student salon and suggests Saoirse explore the campus until evening. Saoirse is filled with excitement at the prospect of exploring the beautiful academy grounds. Saoirse happily skips along, thoroughly enjoying her newfound freedom on campus. Walking the campus grounds once again reminds her of the study room boy from her past life. She remembers with regret that the boy disappeared before she ever learned his name. Saoirse fondly remembers the bad-mannered but kind boy, wondering if he's still out there. Suddenly, Saoirse spots a familiar-looking head of hair in the crowd and freezes. Saoirse realizes the silver-haired figure is not the boy from her past life. A tall, handsome, silver-haired man stands elegantly among the crowd of students. Saoirse is absolutely stunned as she realizes the silver-haired man is actually Enoch Gray. Saoirse observes Enoch from a distance, noting how remarkably different and unfamiliar he seems. Sensing her presence, Enoch stops and turns around, calling Saoirse's name in surprise. Saoirse stares at him, her heart skipping a beat as she looks at him after 5 years. Enoch offers a soft, breathtaking smile that lights up the surrounding atmosphere. Saoirse's eyes widen as a sudden intense feeling washes over her. Enoch warmly approaches and asks if she came to see him, leaving Saoirse completely flustered and speechless. Saoirse is startled as Enoch approaches and casually asks her how she has been. Saoirse internally panics at the immense awkwardness of the reunion while Enoch looks on in confusion. Sweating nervously, Saoirse stammers that she is tired from her journey to excuse her discomfort. But a sudden whoosh, Saoirse frantically bolts away, leaving a bewildered Enoch in her wake. A sudden firm grab stops her in her tracks as Enoch catches her by the wrist. Saoirse flinches as Enoch asks why she's been avoiding him and ignoring all his letters. Enoch confronts her closely, making Saoirse sweat drop as she laments her poor excuse of being busy. Enoch looks directly at her, reminding Saoirse of all the promises they made to do things together. Enoch points out her sudden career move, leaving Saoirse to awkwardly defend how things turned out. Saoirse desperately searches for a way to stop him before the conversation becomes too painful. A dramatic floral border frames Enoch as Saoirse internally screams for him to stop talking. Saoirse looks completely taken aback when Enoch quietly questions if she ever considered him a friend. Surrounded by white lilies, a melancholic Enoch is stopped as Saoirse frantically tells him to wait. Saoirse waves her hands in panic, desperately trying to apologize and smooth over the awkward tension. Saoirse scratches her neck sheepishly, admitting she took their close bond for granted and stopped paying attention. Enoch blushes slightly and falls into a quiet, serious silence, digesting Saoirse's clumsy apology. In a comical chibi scene, Saoirse playfully asks if Enoch ever fixed his blunt speaking habit. Enoch glumly admits his total lack of friends, which only confirms Saoirse's suspicions about him. Saoirse looks at Enoch's back, realizing he remains the same hopeless, friendless person from before. A sudden shout from the surrounding crowd dramatically announces an upcoming match between the two prestigious orders. Saoirse and Enoch both turn in surprise as the students' loud gossip catches their attention. The Academy students cheer enthusiastically, thrilled at the prospect of witnessing the highly anticipated match. Saoirse and Enoch exchange a sweat-dropping, awkward glance under the intense gaze of the excited onlookers. The scene shifts to Adder sitting in a dark bedroom beside his bedridden, sick mother. Ator watches his mother in deep despair, crying out over her inability to rise from bed. His mother bitterly questions why Ator has not yet secured his place as the crown prince. Ator cries out in pain as his mother violently screams in frustration over their failed ambitions. Terrified and shaking, actor clutches his head as he admits his complete uncertainty over the situation. The mother furiously directs her intense anger at Circia, blaming her for ruining all their plans. Looking down at Ator, his mother harshly berates him for losing his crown and father's love. A painted portrait shows a happier past as Ator meekly replies he only wanted her peace. Grabbing Ator aggressively, his mother commands him to obey her completely and let her use him. Shrouded in dark shadows, Ator quietly submits to his mother's demands with absolute chilling obedience. Under a stormy sky, the mother vows to destroy Circia and reclaim their spot at the top. With a heavy creak, the large decorated door of the dark bedroom slowly swings open. Peter silently slips out of the room, closing the heavy door shut behind him with a thud. Moving through the dark corridor, Ator begins discarding his clothes onto the carpet. Standing quietly in front of a mirror, Ator stares at his own bare reflection in the dark. Looking at himself, Ator questions why he is still not the crown prince, his eyes cold. A dark, cursed ink-like mark spreads ominously across his chest, sealing his tragic, agonizing fate. The dark, oppressive atmosphere suddenly breaks into a peaceful view of a bright blue sky. Sunbeams and a bright rainbow illuminate the grand, elegant facade of the Continent Academy. Kane sits quietly on a bench under the trees, meticulously polishing his sword with a cloth. Two students walk past the bench, immediately recognizing Kane and whispering maliciously about him. The students gossip behind his back, assuming Kane is trying to look good for the joint training. The classmates mockingly dismiss Kane's talents, sneering that a commoner will never join the Emblem Order. Kane's hand trembles as he squeezes his sword tightly, deeply wounded by the harsh, insulting gossip. A concerned, glasses-wearing classmate approaches the bench and kindly asks Kane if he is doing all right. Kane looks up with a forced calm, placing a friendly hand on his classmate's shoulder to reassure him. The classmate scratches his cheek with a sheepish grin as Kane looks on with a steady expression. The glasses-wearing classmate asks if the seniors were out of line, but Kane dismisses his concern. His glasses-wearing classmate looks back at him with an anxious, sheepish expression. Kane bitterly notes that no matter how hard he tries to ignore the seniors, they constantly provoke him. The classmate stands up, expressing regret that graduation means losing his only chance to train with Emblem. Kane remains silent, deep in his own thoughts about the upcoming joint training. A bright sky shines over the academy grounds, signaling the start of the historic training session. A loud voice echoes across the training grounds, calling all students to immediate attention. The instructor announces that the elite Emblem Knight Order will lead their final joint graduation training. The students erupt into thunderous cheers, thrilled to train with the continent's greatest Knight Order. Swordsmanship instructor Roderick M. Vine addresses the excited students from a decorated podium. Students excitedly discuss the rare opportunity to impress Commander Circia and potentially join Emblem. Roderick urges the students to prove their academy's worth to the legendary Emblem Knight Order. The students stand in eager anticipation, ready to showcase their skills during the training. The student wonders if the legendary members of Emblem will have an overwhelming, majestic presence. Circia stands elegantly in her blue uniform, unaware of the students watching from afar. The students watch in sheer confusion, questioning if these odd people are really the elite Emblem Knights. Circia furiously scolds Zeke for farting again, completely shattering their majestic image in front of everyone. The onlookers are thoroughly exasperated by the embarrassing and chaotic behavior of the elite knights. Circia suddenly realizes that they have an audience and reacts with panicked embarrassment. Circia feels deeply embarrassed, knowing how drastically different they look from the students' high expectations. Enoch calmly claims that their imperfections make the continent's strongest Knight Order appear more approachable to others. Enoch completely ignores the frantic yelling, maintaining his signature cool and unbothered demeanor. A recruitment page for translators and editors displays various characters and social media donation links. Circia officially welcomes the students, expressing her honor to lead their joint graduation training exam. Circia passionately promises to push the students to their absolute limits using Emblem's training methods. Zeke whispers a distraction to Circia about Osric stretching his uniform, causing Osric to defend himself. Circia checks on the students' snacks while the knights whisper about her overly caring nature. Circia regains her composure and instructs the students to begin warming up with Sir Osric. The students give a half-hearted reply, prompting Circia to question their highly skeptical expressions. The warm sun shines brightly down as the outdoor physical training session finally begins. While other students stretch in the courtyard, Kane focusedly prepares himself for the intensive training ahead. Kane notices his glasses-wearing classmate is missing and wonders if he wandered off somewhere. As Kane considers searching for his friend, Circia suddenly approaches and calls out his name. Kane turns around, coldly questioning how the legendary Emblem commander could possibly know who he is. Circia notes that Kane is graduating through the elite training program despite being a commoner. Kane wonders if negative rumors about him have spread, while Circia dismisses his stiff attitude. Arrogant noble students quickly intervene, demanding that the commoner Kane show proper respect to Circia. The noble student insults Kane's status, sparking a fierce confrontation that Saoirse desperately tries to de-escalate. Saoirse warns the fighting students that further conflict could result in their graduation being cancelled. The noble student backs off begrudgingly, warning Kane that he got lucky thanks to Saoirse's intervention. Deeply insulted, Kane walks away while telling Saoirse to enjoy her pleasant noble-to-noble conversation. While the noble students dismiss Kane, a worried Saoirse insists she has something important to ask him. Saoirse runs after Kane, mentioning she heard he has not decided on his path after graduation. Saoirse makes a shocking and highly prestigious offer, inviting Kane to join Emblem as her adjutant. Saoirse beams with excited anticipation, eager to hear Kane's response to her generous job offer. The watching noble students are left completely speechless by the commander's unbelievable offer to a commoner. Kane stops in his tracks, turning his head back to process the unexpected invitation. Saoirse confirms the position, promising Kane a respected place where he would never be looked down upon. Before Saoirse can even finish her sentence, Kane flatly and immediately rejects her generous offer. Comically bewildered Saoirse tries to process the rejection while Kane firmly reiterates his refusal. Saoirse clutches her head in comically panicked confusion, wondering why Kane rejected her offer and what he could possibly have against Emblem. Kane explains his cautious nature, stating that Emblem's aggressive, straightforward atmosphere simply does not suit him. As Kane compares joining to being a wild cult fighting for survival, Saoirse dejectedly laments her order's rough reputation. Kane calmly asks Saoirse where she thinks he should go instead, if not Emblem. Saoirse reacts with immense frustration and jealousy when Kane expresses his desire to join the Grey Knight Order. Kane bows politely to Saoirse before turning to leave, maintaining his respectful but firm boundary. Watching Kane walk away, Saoirse feels an unexpected surge of respect for his bold preference for Grey. Kane's blatant rejection of her offer only serves to ignite Saoirse's fierce competitive streak. Saoirse grows determined to recruit Kane, interpreting his words as a challenge to prove Emblem's superiority. Saoirse lets out a creepy laugh, vowing to show Kane which Knight Order truly comes out on top. Cold sweat breaks out on Kane's face as he senses Saoirse's terrifying, obsessive energy behind him. Saoirse cackles wildly as Kane sprints away, leaving the silver-haired Enoch to watch with a weary sigh. Enoch reflects on how typical it is of Saoirse to already try claiming Kane for herself. Enoch muses that he does not even need to investigate Kane's rejection from the Grey Knights. Enoch suspects a high-ranking knight played a role in Kane's rejection, noting Kane's persistent desire to join. Smirking, Enoch looks forward to the entertainment of watching Saoirse actually fight to recruit someone. Pacing before the students, Saoirse begins the training by asking them what a knight's most important quality is. An enthusiastic student raises his hand, suggesting outstanding skill is the most important quality. Saoirse dismisses the students' suggestions of skill, honor, and strength, emphasizing that teamwork is the ultimate quality. Saoirse announces team formations for monster hunting in their upcoming graduation exam at the Kalmadan jungle. Saoirse warns the students that the Kalmadan jungle is an incredibly perilous area filled with hidden monsters. Saoirse explicitly warns them that the notorious Swamp of Death is strictly forbidden during their training course. Saoirse reiterates that nobody has ever returned alive from the Swamp of Death, urging absolute caution. Hoping nervously, the academy students listen with growing apprehension to Saoirse's chilling warnings about the swamp. The students salute and shout in unison, acknowledging Saoirse's stern instructions with disciplined resolve. Saoirse commands the students' full attention as she begins explaining the specific details of the training. The students shout in sheer disbelief as a massive, intimidating weapon is wheeled onto the grounds. A massive wooden catapult loaded with a giant boulder stands ready to test the trainees' skills. Zeke cheerfully waves his arms to signal that the catapult team is fully prepared for the demonstration. Saoirse steps forward alongside two elite knights to personally demonstrate the training exercise for the students. Drawing her sword, Saoirse explains that their goal is to slice the launched rocks out of midair. The trainees stammer in sheer disbelief, anxiously asking how many launched boulders they are expected to slice. Saoirse smiles confidently, simply telling the nervous students to watch and learn from the upcoming demonstration. A loud creaking sound echoes as Zeke pulls the heavy lever to activate the massive catapult launcher. With a loud resonant snap, the catapult releases its immense tension and launches its heavy payload. The massive stone projectile arcs high into the bright blue sky above the academy training grounds. Saoirse and her elite knights leap effortlessly into the sky, swords drawn to intercept the incoming boulder. The three elite knights coordinate their movements perfectly, preparing to unleash their devastating combined sword strike. The anxious students hold their breath as Saoirse reiterates her command to simply watch the exhibition. Another sharp snap reverberates through the air as the secondary payload is fired into the sky. A deafening whoosh echoes as the massive flying boulder suddenly shatters into dozens of smaller fragments. A powerful thumb shakes the courtyard as Circia lands heavily back onto the cracked stone floor. Circia challenges the students to see just how many flying targets an elite emblem knight can slice. The trio moves like a blur, leaping directly into the falling rain of stone shards. With glowing eyes, Circia executes a lightning-fast, sweeping slash that creates a brilliant white arc. Sparks and blinding flashes fill the sky as the knights obliterate every single stone fragment instantly. A massive shockwave of dust and wind blasts the terrified students, forcing them to shield their faces. The students gasp in total disbelief, completely unable to track the elite knight's blindingly fast movements. Dumbfounded, the trainees shout in amazement at how the massive rock fell to pieces in a mere blink. Circia and her knights stand victoriously amidst a neat pile of sliced boulders, leaving the students speechless. Circia's vibrant red hair flows elegantly as she prepares to address the academy students. The awestruck students marvel at the incredible unmatched power of the continent's strongest knight order. Flanked by her elite knights, Circia stands proudly as the crowd passionately cheers for Emblem. Circia details the monster-slaying graduation exam, warning of dangers while offering a reliable combat strategy. Circia passionately declares this training is their final opportunity to prove their strength as knights. The students cheer enthusiastically in response, though Kane remains completely silent and detached. Kane nervously gulps, feeling the heavy burden of the looming challenge ahead of him. As other students continue sparring, the silver-haired Enoch approaches Kane sitting alone on a bench. Kane looks up in surprise as a shadow falls over him, interrupting his quiet thoughts. Enoch addresses Kane as his senior, maintaining a calm and respectful expression beneath the shade. Kane admits he is deeply contemplating his future with graduation fast approaching while Enoch listens. Enoch teasingly asks if Kane found Circia impressive, prompting a flustered and immediate denial. Enoch warns Kane of Circia's terrifying sixth sense as she stomps toward them in anger. Circia angrily confronts the duo, her golden eyes flashing with irritation. Both Enoch and Kane quickly deny being close when Circia suspiciously questions their friendly interaction. Circia stubbornly insists that they are close, prompting Enoch to calmly ask for her reasoning. Circia boldly claims Kane occupies Enoch's mind, leaving the commoner completely bewildered by her accusation. Circia aggressively interrogates Enoch, demanding to know his true intentions regarding recruiting Kane for himself. Circe's interest in Kane intensifies due to Enoch's rare flustered reaction, much to Enoch's annoyance. Circia furiously commands him to drop the subject while Kane quietly wishes they would stop fighting. Two onlookers secretly watch the commotion, amused by the elite knights fighting over a commoner. The onlookers discuss the grand rivalry between the Emblem Commander and the Ace of the Grey Knights. Sensing a massive scoop, the reporter decides to investigate Kane's background for a front-page story. The newspaper publishes Kane's tragic backstory, exposing his orphan past and his deep-seated hatred for nobles. Kane bitterly mocks the newspaper's depiction of his resentment toward nobles after his bath. Kane angrily rejects the notion of noble grace, resolving to make his feelings clear to Circia. Putting on his clothes, Kane reveals a back heavily marked by deep, painful scars from his past. Kane silently finishes dressing, his expression hardening as he prepares to face the academy once more. Kane fiercely vows that he will never cooperate or share a friendly bond with any noble. The scene transitions to a clear, bright blue sky shining over the massive academy grounds. A system box introduces the grand main building of the prestigious Continent Academy. Walking down the hallway, Kane startles another student who gasps in surprise at his sudden presence. The student whispers mockingly while passing by, leaving Kane slightly confused by his rude behavior. Kane notices an open door ahead, catching the sound of hushed voices conversing inside the room. Kane hesitates to close the door when he overhears an angry voice ranting about an insolent brat. Overhearing the administrator insult him, a trembling Kane bitterly realizes they view him as mere trash. Kane clenches his fist, remembering his captain's sacrifice, which prevents him from abandoning the school. The scarred mercenary captain warmly praises young Kane's incredible unmatched talent with the sword. Kane solemnly questions why his captain believed in him despite his status limiting his future. Resolving that commoners and nobles can never be equal, Kane decides to nurture his deep grudge. Kane firmly declares that coexistence is impossible, swearing to join Grey and destroy the nobility. As Kane walks away, Circia smiles knowingly inside the room, finally understanding his true perspective. Circia dryly notes that the administrator took an incredibly long time to make his point. Circia sits majestically on her ornate throne, surrounded by beautiful blooming white roses. The administrator gasps in absolute shock, visibly panicking at the commander's sudden chilling words. Circia coldly asks if he is questioning her personal judgment by insulting the knight she chose. Walking down the corridor, Kane looks back with a slight sweat drop, sensing the tension. Circia accuses him of using roundabout talk simply to claim her judgment of knights is poor. Saoirse firmly declares that insulting Kane is equivalent to directly insulting her own personal choice. The administrator frantically complains about humility, but Saoirse counters that noble status is useless in battle. The trembling headmaster furiously accuses Saoirse of insulting him, but she counters that his incompetence insults the academy itself. Saoirse calmly reminds the furious headmaster that he was the one who initiated the insults. The insulted headmaster seethes in silent rage at Saoirse's overwhelming audacity. Outside the closed door, Kane stands quietly in the sunlit hallway, deeply reflecting on their conversation. Kane realizes that the fierce emblem commander possesses a heart as strong as her exceptional blade. A warm feeling stirs within Kane as he realizes Saoirse defended him for his sake. Kane blushes slightly, touched by Saoirse's unexpected defense of his honor. Saoirse threatens to escalate the insult directly to the King of Pavin, completely intimidating the headmaster. The panicked headmaster tries to backtrack, but Saoirse sharply asks if he is calling her a liar. Saoirse demands a direct apology, leaving the terrified headmaster with no other viable option. The headmaster quickly begs for forgiveness, but Saoirse insists he also apologize directly to Kane. The headmaster promises to apologize to Kane, prompting Saoirse to cheerfully conclude their discussion. Saoirse instructs the headmaster to guide Kane's future toward joining the elite Emblem Knights. The thoroughly defeated headmaster submissively agrees to her demand as she departs the room. Kane panics, realizing Saoirse is about to walk out and catch him eavesdropping in the hallway. Kane desperately searches for a hiding spot to avoid an awkward encounter with the commander. Saoirse steps out of the office and spots Kane running away, cheerfully greeting him. Forced to stop, Kane nervously greets Saoirse as she asks if he has changed his mind. Saoirse asks with supreme confidence if he has finally decided to join her Knight Order. Kane stands completely speechless and flustered, struggling to find a way to respond to her. Kane admits his embarrassment for misjudging Emblem, while Saoirse teases him about his previous prejudices. Kane awkwardly scratches his neck, attempting to explain his feelings while Saoirse looks on curiously. Kane confesses that he previously assumed all members of Emblem were just arrogant noble brats. Saoirse stares in surprise as Kane offers a sincere, halting apology for his unfair assumptions. Kane gasps in sheer shock as Saoirse suddenly grabs his collar and pulls him close. Saoirse asserts that he is a perfect fit, directly inviting him to join her Knight Order. Saoirse smiles with undeniable warmth, her golden eyes shining with sincerity and absolute confidence. Kane stands frozen, his entire face flushing bright red from her intense and close proximity. Overwhelmed by embarrassment, Kane suddenly bolts down the hallway as Saoirse watches him in amusement. Saoirse bursts into cheerful laughter, thoroughly entertained by the young commoner's flustered reaction. On graduation exam day, a student helps his injured classmate limp back from the Kalmadon jungle. The student gently directs his groaning, injured classmate to rest near the exam camp's tents. With a weak nod, the injured trainee carefully holds his bloody, heavily bandaged arm. Kane watches with concern as returnees warn that the jungle is overrun with dangerous monsters. Kane looks around anxiously, wondering why his glasses-wearing junior has not returned from the training. The glasses-wearing junior walks alone, regretting that this is his last chance to train with Emblem. He resolved to enjoy the graduation exam training to the fullest while he still could. Kane glances back, wishing his junior could make positive memories with the elite order. Catching sight of his junior walking into the forest, Kane calls out to stop him. Kane tries to remember his junior's name as the boy heads deeper into the jungle. Kane frantically warns his junior that entering the perilous Kalmadon jungle alone is incredibly dangerous. Shouting at him to stop, Kane runs into the dense forest after his reckless junior. Kane warns his junior that acting alone during the exam could lead to severe expulsion. With a sudden wince, Kane's face is sharply scratched by a low-hanging tree branch. Wiping his scratched face, Kane notes the dangerous foliage and the mysterious rising fog. Clutching his throbbing head, Kane realizes the fog is making him dizzy and decides to hurry. Kane looks around frantically, only for his junior to suddenly appear and greet him cheerfully. Kane furiously scolds him for going alone, while his junior is deeply touched by his concern. Overwhelmed with gratitude, his junior joyfully asks if this is what having a true friend feels like. Laughing off Kane's grumpiness, his junior happily agrees to turn back to avoid any monster attacks. The junior with glasses smiles warmly and agrees to turn back with Kane. As they walk, the junior notes Kane's absence from training while Kane claims he was unwell. Kane questions his junior's exam eligibility, prompting the boy to mock his slow perception. Demanding clarification, Kane struggles to breathe as a thick, suffocating fog begins to settle around them. A desperate urge to escape builds as the oppressive atmosphere of the forest worsens. A sinister explanation describes how monsters sustain themselves by devouring human fear, despair, and hopelessness. Kane urgently commands his junior to hurry, deeply confused by his sudden motionless stance in the fog. While Kane staggers from a sudden painful headache, his junior compares monster feeding habits to demonkin. Kane desperately begs for quiet, but the junior explains how demon can manifest as a person's deepest desire. Kane is paralyzed with shock as the terrifying reality of his junior's identity begins to dawn on him. The voice mockingly reveals that the demonkin took the form of a companion to exploit Kane's loneliness.